saw this happen. I'm sorry. The no camera graphic broke me. Like if you just off camera, I wouldn't have sold. But I'm sorry. Hello everyone. Good evening. Happy Grin Grappler Day. We're back here on this glorious Tuesday evening. Young Guns, the Hardys are in NXT. We've got some stiff competition, but we're going to try our best here tonight. We have got a very special edition of Grin Grappler. And look, we say that every month, but this actually is unique, right? Next month we've done this for 3 years. Next month will mark. And this is a first. We are doing our very first and maybe last rivalry. We'll talk about that maybe later in the night in terms of what other ones could even fit the bill. It is Ric Flair, it is Ricky Steamboat, an iconic US pairing, of course. And we have your favorite expert panel, as always. Bobby, your camera is fixed. You are here. You are live. I'm ready to go. How you feeling, brother?
I'm doing well, man. I'm fired up for this one. Feeling bold and disruptive, unpredictable and dangerous, as I tend to do. But yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Did you see that someone quoted Dwayne and was like, God, man, just play the character. Please stop telling me about it, how fun it is to play the character. Yeah, I'm sure it's fun. All right, well, I'm glad to hear it. Try not to be too disruptive. I mean, you're already off to a crazy start in that regard, right, with the cameras. So yeah, interesting times. The Oracle of Wrestling. You've been known to be disruptive in your time. How are you feeling?
I'm good. Hopefully, that burger that I ate that was supposed to be medium well, but appeared to be medium rare, will not be disruptive to me in the next 24 to 48 hours. I'm
tremendous.
I'm doing well. I've watched lots of wrestling for tonight and for tomorrow evening in the last, I'd say 36 hours or so. I'm all caught up. I'm all ready to go. I watched all 6 of these matches in succession in one sitting because I have an issue that probably should be examined by a medical doctor. While Monday Night Raw Netflix was playing and I was making dinner and all sorts of other things.
Wow.
That probably softened the blow of sitting there and,
right
on at the same time, on all in a row. But I'm good. We're here to talk about the one of the great rivalries of all time, and a rivalry that I think, and I'll go more into it, is the first sort of heralded special sort of King of the Mountain rivalry of the modern era of wrestling in the footage era, which is like basically the late 70s until now. So the first one that was like obsessively talked about for decades.
Yeah, and to that point, if we're getting ahead of ourselves, with Meltzer's presence at Chi-Town Rumble, you legitimately get that as like a kind of an inadvertent centerpiece of the whole thing, right? That's our third match. So yeah, we'll get to that definitely. That's a very, very interesting piece of this.
Do you think Dave had a landline phone and called?
Dude, that was amazing. That was an amazing thing. Bless Dave. We should have booked him for this. Contrarian Alex, we did book you. We're glad to have you. You are the king of honor now around these parts, as you said yourself on the Bird app this past weekend. How you feeling, brother?
Getting there. For those that didn't tune into the draft, you should go back and watch it. It was a good time. It was a hoot. So on the mend from some illness, caught that itis that's going around, the crud, as they call it. Medical science has worked pretty well. Sorry, Bob, but still on the mend. And yeah, I'm excited. Wouldn't miss another installment of the Grin Grappler. I think I might be even more curious than our wonderful host, Joel Hubert, here this evening about how this is going to work out. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it here in a minute. The introduction to the Flair Steamboat dynamic, but we've got some interesting ground to cover here. And it's funny. It's we always seem to wind up on the topic of how time is slowed down in wrestling and whatnot. The matches we're talking about here take place over 12 years, but God, how much it feels like things change in the landscape in those 12 years. It's interesting journey we'll be on here this evening. But yeah.
It is especially a time where you look at WrestleMania and there's it's almost, if someone just, had got out of a time machine from 2013, they would go, wait, so Rock, Cena, and Punk are, they're the names I have to be worried about, and that Cody Rhodes guy who was pretty good back then. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it is interesting in that regard. I agree with you completely. There's the way we're going to try to do this, folks, and it may take many different shapes because we're all kind of going to call it in the ring and see how it unfolds. But it isn't so much two individual episodes, right? It's important to know this isn't Ric Flair episode and a Ricky Steamboat episode combined. It is about their rivalry, obviously. Now, we're going to talk about them as individuals for better and worse and all that comes with that. But I definitely think we are lucky in that this particular rivalry has some depth to it as a conversation, from a conversation point of view, in terms of different elements it represents in wrestling history. So I guess the first thing to say is, for anyone who missed the conversation at the end of last month's show as to why this is what we're doing, we decided a long time ago Flair would never get his own episode because he's probably the most... I mean, how many documentaries? They're making a movie now. And that's not even to... that's not even to spotlight all of the sort of... the less favourable parts of Ric Flair's life, like the fact that he seems to just be an outright piece of shit. I mean, it's just generally, what is there left to say about Ric Flair, right? It feels like a wrestler that doesn't need kind of glorifying on any kind of platform. And not that we're going to change anyone's mind, but it just felt kind of silly. Steamboat, in very different ways, I think fits a similar bill, right? See, the book on Steamboat has been time and time again, one of the greatest baby faces ever, has this incredible catalogue. We could cover those matches. This was a chance to kind of kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, and talk about something a little bit more interesting, which is their dynamic together. I did say at the start of the show, and I'll go back to at the end of the show, I don't know if another rivalry would fit as well as this one, so we'll kind of maybe circle that back to that at the very end of the show. But nonetheless, let's dive in here. Let's talk about our fandoms, specifically as it's related to this particular pairing. Now, again, feel free to add colour with your experience with Flair or Steamboat, but if we can, essentially, let's talk most about when you first saw their matches together, when you got, exposed to the idea of Flair Steamboat as a thing, because that is a thing, right? Those two words, one after another, those two names are tied in some way. So, Bobby, I'll start with you because I genuinely don't know. Firstly, how many of these matches had you seen? And secondly, your experience with this rivalry. Go for it.
I had seen 3 of these, so the middle 2 and then the Saturday Night match.
Got you.
And the reason is because in 2017 or whatever, when it seemed like Flair was in a real bad way, I did watch some Flair stuff. Those matches came up, and then the 1994 stuff. I've been watching 1994 WCW, so that's come up pretty recently. So yeah, I have seen 3 of them. Okay,
and so before you'd watch those matches you mentioned, what was your awareness of the rivalry beyond that? Was it literally just knowing the idea of Flair Steamboat as these kind of
yeah, pretty much, from the WWE documentaries and Legends of Wrestling and all that. Yeah, I mean, just nothing more than surface level stuff. Yeah,
because it is kind of used as like a cliche example of guys that are made to wrestle each other, right? Flair and Steamboat. That's kind of a go-to comparison. The Oracle of Wrestling. I sense your answer will be quite different. I'm very interested. Your experience with this rivalry, mate. Go for it.
Yeah. So previously, I had seen 5 of these matches. The only one I hadn't seen was the Japan match.
Mm-hmm.
So Flair Steamboat was the first sort of hardcore fan rivalry that I had heard about in terms that had legendary status when I was a little kid in the early 2000s. Was a rivalry that was brought up at the independent shows I'd go to, but my brother, it probably was vaguely mentioned on WWE TV likely. And then of course the DVDs and stuff for the Flair's DVD in the late 03, that obviously was the first of many times that rivalry was put on WWE home video and whatnot. The first time I had ever gotten access or seen the matches was, I think my brother Dylan had given me a DVD with the trilogy, or VHS, not DVD, VHS,
wow,
with the trilogy on it that he showed it to us when we were little. And then I think we got I remember there was a guy who used to sell VHSs and stuff at the back of his van at an indie show I went to.
Used to be better.
And yes, it did. And we got, I want to say, we definitely got Great American Bash 88, but I want to say one of the matches from the trilogy was, because we got like one or two things. It was like a best of Flair or something. I think we got like Great American Bash 88 and then like a best of Flair or something. And like, I don't know. My memory's a little bit foggy because I was like 9 or 10 years old when this happened. But like,
Fair.
it like this was in like 2002 maybe, and I remember seeing, because I remember Dylan had one and he was like, "Don't mess up my trilogy tape, you fucker," or something like that, you know. And he told me that with those words when I was like 9. So those are the words that I was told by my those
awesome.
are the I heard when I was growing up. But then of course like with the WWE home video pushes and the Flair DVDs and the Steamboat DVDs. I ended up, watching the trilogy several times over, and once again, the WCW Smarks Choice poll, which I bring up, all the fucking time.
Take a drink, right? Take a hit.
That actually opened me up to a lot of WCW like history that I had not known of, or rather known about, and I had no real inkling that Flair and Steamboat had another like 6-month long feud in '94, and I was like, holy shit, they have more matches, because I'd already seen the trilogy, and I think I'd already seen Boogie Jam, because I think Steamboats came out, and Boogie Jam was like, that came out, the Steamboat DVD came out in 09, right? Or no, it was 2010.
So the way they were talking on something we'll talk about later, it seemed like 2010. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, because that means I would have seen the '94 stuff before that, but
they put over John Morrison at one point, so there you go.
But because I remember I saw the Landover, Maryland match when I was doing the WCW thing, and then I also saw, and then I saw the '94 stuff in 09 when I was doing the WCW Smarks Choice stuff. But yeah, I mean, this was the first sort of, like I said, legendary rivalry that was like hyped up by any sort of like hardcore fan, or even like a lot of the old school fans who still watched when I was a kid, like would talk about Flair with a lot of joy, and like, this was the best rivalry.
It's part of that, I think, is because it's representative of this kind of, and I'll get into this a little more later, but Cornette has described it as this kind of middle ground, right, where it's a clash of eras, a crossover of sorts, in that there is a theatrical element to the matches, there is certainly an excitement emphasis with the matches, but they're still rooted in something built around the fundamentals. I mean, a lot of the matches are fundamentals. So because of that, I think for a whole generation of fans and wrestlers and wrestling people, they became kind of the sort of standard example of, peak in-ring performance, right? It's the easiest way to explain it. Like, it wasn't Flair Steamboat, but is a thing you'll hear people say from that generation in particular. So it's an interesting one, certainly. And I'm really intrigued, Alex, where you stand, because when we were putting this together, this is not something we've ever discussed, I don't think, Flair and Steamboat, right? I don't believe so, you and I. So it was interesting when we were putting it together. Alex kind of just put his hand up and said, boys, you do your thing. This is not necessarily your domain, right, in terms of remembering beat for beat, this match and that match, which was interesting to me. So I'm very intrigued. Your experience with this rivalry, mate, go for it.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what the one I always think of was, and we'll get to that here in a moment. But yeah, I remember like when we first got high-speed internet when I was in high school. It may have been right when I got to college, but it was like right when I was like getting into the forums and stuff. I found a post and I downloaded a zip file. I don't know if any of y'all are old enough to know what that is, but it had every match between the Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask that ever made tape, which included their match in Madison Square Garden, which like Vince McMahon's on commentary and has no idea what's going on. But I remember like reading the posts, like that came, like the replies to it, like every one of them. And I just remember thinking at that point in time, it was like an argument amongst like old heads, what the greatest wrestling series, like the greatest series of individual matches that like two dudes had in wrestling. Basically, the consensus came down to Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask, Misawa and Kobashi, and Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. That was like the answer of like these are the best pairings that have ever happened in wrestling. And then physical media dropped. Triple H had some DVD. He had many, but this particular one,
did. Yeah, I bet he did.
There's a particular one that I think it was after the quad injury. The cover was black and white. That's what I remember. But I remember, one of the bonus features was he wanted the Wrestle War match on it, just so people could see it. And this was before they really started putting out WCW material, and so that was a big deal. And then, of course, that Ric Flair box set that came out in 03, winter of 03, I believe it was, that like changed everything. Everyone's like, holy shit. And so that has, I believe, Chi-Town Rumble on it, but it does have a whole section dedicated to the feud with Ricky Steamboat. And I was thinking about, of these, I had not seen the first and last match before, but I'd kind of seen all the other ones in between. And, they have other matches, the Spring Stampede in 94, and they have, in today's climate of how readily available wrestling is, a Steamboat Flair match is something you can just like accidentally wind up on, and just like you trip backwards and fall, and you're like, oh, well, here's another Flair Steamboat match. So we'll talk as we go through my thoughts on it, but it really is like, doesn't take too much time to figure out like, yeah, this is one of the great pairings of just something that worked in a way that, two guys that, both had phenomenal careers. One a little bit more so than the other, but Flair, who had so many great foes, that should just like as the starting pistol, that should be like the declaration of Ric Flair's greatest opponent. And you should realize like how heavy that is considering like all the great foes he had.
Yes. And I think, more specifically to your point, not only his greatest foe, but the guy who it felt like Rick truly saw as an equal. Flair truly saw as an equal, in the sense that how many of those greatest foes, when you think of the matches, it's Flair plugging them into his match, right? And like certainly you see a lot, there's Flair tropes that are all over these matches, don't get me wrong, but there are also elements that you get the sense are distinct and direct from Steamboat. And that is, to me, when you hear Flair speak of these matches, what's most striking is just the reverence he had for Steamboat, how much he loved wrestling him. And I think he saw him as an equal, and I think that bled through into the matches themselves. Just to answer, to set the stage here, to explain the acts.
Well, real quick, I forgot to add.
Yes, mate, go for it.
We're not doing the best Ric Flair Ricky Steamboat match. That's the one that was at a house show that Dave Meltzer was at and no one else ever saw. Yes. Remember, that's the best match they ever had. Yeah.
Yes. The acts here, so it is important to note, these two worked together in the late 70s in Mid-Atlantic, and many of those matches have lived on in clip form. Some of them have got physical media releases. I know there's one where Andre is the referee that I have somewhere here on Blu-ray or something. As far as I know, none of them are in full. As far as I know. I could be wrong on that. But like when I looked into it, it seemed like there was 10 matches from the late 70s that we got clips of, but we didn't have the full match, unfortunately, from the Mid-Atlantic.
There's like 2 or 3 in 89 that are... And then there's the one Dave went to, and then there's like 2 or 3, right? Others that are house shows that are taped in 89?
Yeah, there's some fan cams from 89.
I thought there was one... Is it the Landover? Because I know there was one that I saw for the Smart
Landover is...
Was that the one he was at? And then there was another one he was...
Landover's the famous Dave one.
I saw that...
Yeah.
That, like... Yeah, I can't remember.
I think Landover's the famous Dave one, I think.
Yeah.
Where it was the 79 stuff, was that when Flair was still big and beefy? Or that would have been after the plane crash, right?
Yeah, it's after. So... Because I was trying to piece... I actually... Later on in this show, we're going to have a whole segment about Matt Striker's conversation with Ricky Steamboat, and that will take many directions, and I don't think many of them will be positive, but I will say, for whatever reason, I never in my mind put it together that Flair started before Steamboat. I don't know why, and that's like stupid on my part, granted, but because of obviously how things would end up in every which way, I never pieced together. Flair debuted in 72 and Steamboat in 76, but I think, Alex, to what you just asked, because Flair like transforms at that point, it kind of feels like those years are almost erased at times from what people remember of him, right? So those matches, according to the guys involved,
For
were
those
their
who don't
best
know, Ric
matches.
Flair started like 300 pounds. He was like a
Yes.
big fucking Dick Murdoch type wrestler.
Absolutely. Those guys swear by those matches in the late 70s. I've seen the clips. I don't know. Steamboat, of course, would go on to have the tag team with Youngblood, which, again, this is about the rivalry, but I do think it's important to know, Oracle, just for a moment, for anyone that isn't aware. The Steamboat Youngblood team is something of legend in wrestling, fair to say, Oracle.
Real quick to
Yes, mate.
go back, the Landover is the one that's on tape.
Yes,
That's the one, because
yeah.
I'm looking at Cage Match now. Yeah, that's the one I
Yeah.
saw.
It is indeed.
Okay, ask that question one more time. Sorry,
Yes.
'cause I was looking that up.
The Steamboat Youngblood team was a huge deal,
absolutely.
and historically probably is a little bit understated for modern fans. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was they had an all-time famous rivalry and feud that ended at the Greensboro Coliseum with Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernodle in what was a holy grail of wrestling for many, many years. What was the nickname of it? Had a nickname. Had a tagline. Shit.
Final Conflict.
Yes, duh. Final Conflict. And that match was like lost to history for a while. And for about 25 years or so, and they got it on tape in the mid 2000s, and it circulated and online and with all the nerds like us, and one of the best matches of the 80s for sure. The matches, in terms of like the background and the hype for the match, it's known for like shutting down the interstate around Greensboro. The fans were so excited. It was the legend is that the interstate was like totally like bumper to bumper to see this match.
That's one of those Jimmy Crockett stories he loved to tell.
Oh yeah,
they came on TV and they said, "Don't come to the wrestling."
But that match is absolutely worth seeking out. An absolute classic. Legitimately one of the best matches of all time.
Oracle.
Yeah, so go for it, Alex.
I was going to say real quick. Do you remember those TNA segments when Kevin Nash was like training Alex Shelley? You remember those?
Oh yes.
There's one they did where Nash was talking about all the different legends that he trained, and one of them was Don Kernodle. Talked about training Don Kernodle, and that always like every time I hear his name, I just think of Nash taking credit for training him and Hector Garza, and there's this long list of the most random names you can think of. It's great shit.
Those segments are spectacular. They absolutely are. And opposite him, Flair, of course, wins the NWA World Heavyweight title for the first time in September of '81. This first match we're about to do is in the midst of that reign. He defended the belt against Steamboat semi-regularly, mostly in the Mid-Atlantic territory, but this is obviously the exception to that because we're about to head to Japan for their only match together in Japan. Before we do that again, so the first act is kind of, in an ideal world, the first act would be the 70s stuff, right? This is sort of an adjustment. We've got this match, we have Boogie Jam. We obviously have the 89 stuff, and someone asked, I believe it was Don't Have an Ad, asked, yes, why didn't this bring Stampede? Oracle and I wanted to get the last match in because it was different. Oracle specifically wanted to, and as soon as he explained it, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And then it just came down to picking which matches we preferred, and we kind of leaned towards the rematch, right, which we can get to later. We'll talk about Spring Stampede too, no doubt. But that was, for any questions as to the acts, that kind of broadly explains it. Before we get started with our first match, Oracle, I'm intrigued. How do you feel about both guys and their work in Japan? Because it's a fun time just to talk about this for a moment. Because both of them, I've seen debate about both of them and their output in Japan. So what do you make of them?
I'm not a huge fan of either in Japan. I think they're both very good in Japan. I was thinking about this while I was watching the match, and the match is good for what it's worth. But I don't like Gaijin versus Gaijin matches in Japan that much.
Yeah.
To me, it just doesn't
Scratch the itch, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't fit to me. Like it never, it's like, especially when it's like guys like Flair and Steamboat. It's more interesting when like they would do like the summit shows in the early '90s
Yeah.
when like the WWF guys would do their shtick and like the Japanese fans would be like, "What the hell's going on?" And like
They are
Laughing at
lucky
people.
here, though. It has to be said, they are lucky. The crowd, I mean, Steamboat is over huge here, which is
Oh yeah,
fortunate.
absolutely.
But
Yeah, yeah.
generally, I agree with your point.
It's
Yeah.
it's just I can't ever get like I either want like homegrown guys versus homegrown or Gaijin versus
Right.
top stars or whatever. Like I Gaijin versus Gaijin and never like, and this is something I literally like started to notice. Like, and then I was like, this match is good, but like, it's I don't know. It just feels out of place when we have like I don't know.
Mhm.
It's weird. That's a weird thing to say, but it just
No,
feels.
I get it. I think there's been some debate about Steamboat. I know there was some. There's some lore to this that I'm not an expert on, but I want to say there was conversations at the time about Steamboat's fit in Japan and some questions about it, and it kind of hindered his ability to go back consistently. I believe I'm almost certain of it. Like in All Japan, Flair, of course, would make pretty regular trips as NWA champion.
Mhm.
And Flair stuff in Japan is like there's some of it I love. I mean, him and Temru in '92 has become kind of a favorite of mine when he's representing the WWF hilariously. But I
Some people
also
really
think he
like the
has,
jumbo matches too, like the.
yeah, the jumbo stuff is famous. I've always found it to be a little drier when he's in Japan, and
Yeah, and that's kind of what I feel like. Unless it's like unless it's like Stan Hansen or Doc or Terry Funk or something
right.
like
Who would
who can
yeah,
just are just like especially Terry and Hansen who are legitimate. They basically weren't even gaijin. You know what I mean?
no, they were
They
yeah,
were just stars. And they're
mega
like,
stars, yeah, absolutely.
but like I don't know. It's always like a little bit weird. But the match was very good.
He is,
One of
yes.
our shorter matches, so that was which is always a nice change of pace in this situation.
Hmm.
They don't really they never reach the next level in this match.
No,
They sort of kind of go to like the starting out process and then sort of immediately jump into like finishing run stuff. There's not as much progression here, but it's a very good match, and I think was a nice sort of opening to this. I think it was a really good selection for a number of reasons. One, because of the setting, and two, we did a good job of picking like different periods of each guy's career.
right.
Because this was Flair's first title reign, where he
Yes.
was a babyface,
Hmm.
and this is Steamboat before he really become like he's a megastar in the Carolinas, but he's not like it really
Yeah.
was like the J Youngblood team. I think was going on around this time.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Right.
so Ricky by this point had gotten pretty big in the Carolinas. But it's before they're like mega stardom, before the expansion and before Ricky goes to New York and Crockett has its run in the mid '80s. Like, so it's sort of the territory run, right? Like,
Yeah.
and this is a really good snapshot of that.
It is indeed. Just to fill in some of the gaps that I missed earlier, June 4th, 1982 is the date on this NWA World Heavyweight title, as I mentioned. All Japan Pro Wrestling, our setting. Alex, I'm intrigued as to your kind of exposure to either guy in Japan, and then once you get beyond that, what your thoughts on the match were. Go for it.
Yeah, this is an 82, so this is 2 years before his big injury. One of the things that always really tickled me as a novelty was Steamboat was tag partners with Onita in All Japan, and they were like going to be, the high flying tag team. And then, of course, Onita had his knee injury and was out for 5 years, something like that. And then it's always so funny to think of the idea that Atsushi Onita was going to be the next big high flyer in pro wrestling. So the version I found of this on YouTube, the opening of it has like Onita giving Steamer like a pep talk in the back. So Steamboat, man, not to say, he's anything to shake a stick at in these other matches, but man, no wonder he's one of those guys that, had to find God because he cheated on his wife 7,000 times. You know, so it's
Oh yeah, he's
a handsome fucking man here. A huge part of this match is like being carried the way it is the fucking reverence that Japanese crowd had for the NWA title. It literally gets a pop when Ric Flair opens his robe, the polite round of applause and whatnot. But as far as their Japanese work, Steamboat, yeah, it's Rick Steamboat. It's pretty. It's not like, we always talk about Vader. That's Joe, you and I go to of like, oh man, Japanese Vader was a revolution. But he's still something we get used to for the rest of this too. You're gonna throw an arm drag, clap. You're gonna do a power slam. I always love those touches. And then Flair in Japan, I can't really. I'm not a big fan of the match with Kerry where he wins the title back. It's kind of, we talked about that a little bit in the Von Erich Grin Grappler of, Kerry's best match ever was shortly before that with Jumbo Shiruda. And Flair in Japan is, he looks resplendent and he is Ric Flair, but it's not like, I don't know. I don't find his matches interesting there the way I do like Bockwinkel's or even like Harley Race or something like that. Just the little changes they would make is, that's kind of one of the knocks on Flair. He just did the same thing over and over again. But anyway, so they're neither guys that I can start reciting page and verse their catalog of matches they had in Japan because neither of them, that's not the stuff that like appealed to me. This match in particular, and again, Steamboat, the conditioning of these two is insane, but like the height Steamboat's getting on some of the leapfrogs in this match, it's just like freak athleticism, man. It's like, and even Flair, he's trying. He's getting, Ric Flair, that's the whole thing. Rick wasn't an athlete the way Ricky Steamboat was an athlete. Rick had great conditioning, and Rick, was athletic, but you watch like, Ricky's a good example. Those Sting matches, the Barry Windham Broadways, you watch those, and there's a clear discrepancy in like the athleticism between the two. But Rick here is trying. He's going for leapfrogs and shit. What he has that Steamboat does not is, in this match, more so than probably any of the others, some of the best working punches you're ever going to see. He gets Steamboat in the corner at one point and is throwing these uppercuts that just look fucking devastating. So it's a quick, to the point, fun starting point for what we're doing here. But, nothing blow away. But the novelty of it will always be there, that All Japan ring. And every time we talk about All Japan, New Japan specifically, but Japanese wrestling from the 80s presentation-wise was so far ahead of everything else that was going on that you watch this in 2025 and it feels like you're just watching late 90s pro wrestling because it's in 4:3 ratio, not something that's from fucking 45 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. That is wild. It's almost 45 years ago. My goodness, it's wild. Even now that rocked me there. Yeah, we see, talk about starting point. Dude, the lockup. I immediately was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. The lockup here, it's maybe their best one across the whole set, man. Like it's that snap, and Flair always had that with his lockup. One of the best wrestling lockups ever. But him and Steamboat, boom, it clicks and it's immediately off and running. They use a set piece here early that they would go to a lot in their matches, and I think we may get in like 4 or 5 of these, which is where Steamboat gets the headlock to wear Flair down. That became familiar. Bobby, what did you think of this match?
No, I thought the match, for what it was fine. But yeah, like the atmosphere is great. And, you bring up, like, we saw a lot of these things in most of the other matches, the headlock or Flair doing the turnbuckle bump or Steamboat putting him in the figure 4 or, diving crossbody, roll through. Like, so they kind of had figured out, like, their match by this point, and kind of everything else we see is just versions of that are, like, obviously they change it with the length and stuff, but, like, they figured out the big, like, signature spots they need to do.
Yeah, they definitely they definitely have patterns and such, and they definitely have a kind of outline that they stay pretty close to. The headlock being Steamboat's kind of go-to wear Flair down is all over this lineup, and I haven't got a problem with it. I mean, it makes sense, but it is important to note, and this not necessarily as a defense, but I'm just getting out of the way. It's important. There is no way Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat wrestled these matches with the belief that anyone in the history of Earth, anyone beyond them, I mean, would ever watch these matches like back to back. You know what I'm saying? And that may sound stupid, okay? You may go, what does that matter? Here's what I mean by that, folks. If you watch Randy Orton and Christian's rivalry, Christian will do things fully aware that people are watching them that way eventually. He knows people are going to watch him that way. So he'll do tiny little quirks. And Oracle, the phrase you've used before is learned psychology, right? Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, there's no way that as they sat there at Chi-Town Rumble, Steamer goes, I'm gonna work the headlock. They're gonna know all Japan. They're gonna know. They're gonna be as a callback. And again, that doesn't mean we can't look at it that way. There's gonna be some redundancy in spots. But Oracle, you and I have talked about this before. It is part of the challenge with looking at this stuff, right? When you look at someone like Flair, him and Brett clash for that reason. Philosophically, it's very different. Flair was not, I don't want to say there wasn't detail work, but it wasn't the same way as we've come used to since the way that the tape is out there now is very different. That makes sense, Oracle?
Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of learned psychology in the trilogy in '89, I think, because it's on TV. Yeah. And I think that they were aware of that, so there were a few like, oh, he got him with this spot before in this previous match, but they're going to dodge it here. So, like, that happened a few times, but it's not like, it's not Brad or Christian or somebody like that who, like, it's
there's a pendulum about this whole thing of, like, now we've gone too far.
Yeah.
And every match seemingly has to have a callback. I watched that King Coda match from last night, and they like teased to the crowd. I remember it because it was so gross, but remember their first match, they did like that suplex to the outside. They teased to the crowd they were going to do that. It's like, no one fucking cares, dude. You don't have to call back to something from 3 weeks ago. But back in these days, Flair and Rick just taking the long drag off his cigarette and just saying, brother, same thing we did in Japan. We're going to go out there. They're going to love it. And that's not to take another opportunity to fucking blow Bret Hart, but like that's the whole thing of him. Even before, because Christian's a great example of like he was around.
Yeah,
he was conscious of the fact of how readily available this shit is, and people can watch this and be like, they're just doing the same fucking thing. And that's the genius of Bret is like, I don't think he necessarily predicted the internet and everyone was going to have easy access to his matches, but the thought in his mind is like, well, what if someone rents all three of these tapes? What if someone rents the 3 pay-per-views where I wrestled Diesel on them and we just have the same match? And that's all 3 of those matches are wildly different. But coming back to our subject du jour, can't fault them because these crowds are on their feet and fucking going nuts when they do this act they do on the road. Yeah.
And we should also know this is a pro King Kota program. We should know that. That was just me.
Oh yeah, I love Dakota.
Yeah. I wanted to make it clear to people. But Brett and Flair, when you hear Brett, and he's since been a lot nicer because they're friends again. But there's that one interview, and you can tell he's being completely honest. He just truly in his heart, Brett doesn't understand why people think Ric Flair's great. And it's all because of what we're discussing now, right? Like he says it, he goes, I mean, he worked really hard, but it didn't make any sense what he was doing. Because in Brett's mind, it's like, where is the detail heavy stuff he would do on pay-per-view? So it's an interesting thing. I think it's worth establishing now. Flair does work the leg here, which of course would become familiar, and rightly so, that makes sense. This is like, Steamboat takes an extended shine here, man. Like, he takes the first 10 minutes of this match, almost 80s WWF style, Oracle, right? Like, it's shine, shine, shine. They kind of hurry, I thought, on the finish, but the people were rocking. And of course, we do immediately get introduced to, what would be a trend with these two, which is just the raw physicality of the guys whacking each other with those chops, which, I mean, every time I pop. So, anything else on our first match? Oracle, because I know I went to you first. Anything else on this, mate?
No, not really. I just think that it is a once again the addition of this match is good because it's a good. I'm just thinking more of I like how we kind of pick the eras of each guy.
For sure, absolutely. All right. Well, with that in mind, let's move forward a couple years here, or just shy of. Greensboro Coliseum, March 17th, 1984. It's Boogie Jam, brother. And it is, this is what, 4 months after Flair for the Gold, right? November, so yeah,
So
4
he's
months.
still technically a face here.
He's a babyface,
But
yeah.
he starts to, by the end of 84, he turns into, basically becomes the first Flair Dusty match is kind of face versus face, but he basically becomes a heel by like early to mid 85 for sure. But this is Flair as the, this is like the beginning of his true peak. It's like when he's at his peak.
For sure. And I think he did, I mean, between him and Steamboat, he's obviously going to be the heel regardless, right? He just has to be for the matches.
Sure.
But there is a feel to the match that's slightly, it's a great contrast to what we get in 89 when they go long, in the sense that them both being baby faces definitely does play with the dynamic in a way that later is not a problem, you know, and I think that's something we'll get into here. But the elephant in the room here that I must establish, because I think it's going to come up a lot, is that look, folks, there's a lot of wrestling that I have downloaded over the last, year or whatever. And I knew I had this rivalry because I'd gotten like one of those sets with every, and so I was very, very content about what, I'm going to have this match for the lads. And Bobby messaged me on, I believe, Friday. And he said, does anyone have this Boogie Jam match? Because I can't find it. I said, oh, of course I have it, Bobby. And then I clicked on it and I heard Matt Striker suddenly talking to me. I said, well, hold on a second. And then I realized that I had access to a version of this match that had Matt Striker and Ricky Steamboat on commentary. And I don't think it's all bad, okay? I mean, it's nice to hear Ricky for a bit, and then he's there for an hour, and you're going to go, well...
Yeah, for the first, I even think like the first half hour it's fine, and then like it just gets...
And at some point early on, Yes, Alex?
What's the significance of the show? Why is this match so hard to come across? Is there one?
No, I think it's just... I genuinely think it's one of those matches that...
Steamer DVD, I think, more than anything.
Yes,
right?
This was on the network, because remember when the network do Hidden Gems, they uploaded Boogie Jam. Yeah. So I think it's just one of those matches where like the uploads are just down right now. It's out there. It's definitely out there. Like I've seen it before without this commentary. This was on the DVD.
It was first on the Steamboat DVD. That's why the commentary.
Yeah. But there was a version of it that didn't have this because I've seen it before.
I will say there's no moment as bad in this as when a particular Rabid Wolverine recorded commentary for his DVD with Todd Grisham, and Todd Grisham didn't know who Jushin Liger was and didn't know how to pronounce his name. Like you could see the steam coming off of Benny's head. Jesus. Like he was not pleased with the happenings.
So, some point early on in this, something happens, and we're going to just get this out of the way, and then we'll talk. It becomes apparent in a shocking reveal that Ricky Steamboat refers to Matt Striker as Strike. and look, these guys are friends, and I heard it and I went, all right, that could be a problem. And originally it was only a couple times, and I was, by the end of the match, I mean, he's just, everything that happens going, now listen, Strike, and here's the deal, Strike. At one point he sort of puts Matt Striker in this top tier of workers, and even Striker concedes on that. I mean, it felt like they just got back from a round of golf. I mean, it was bizarre. And I think everyone's going to have notes on that as we go. So I wanted to establish it. This is a long one. This is a Broadway. I think it's very good. I think it is hurt greatly by the later long match we do on this lineup. And I'll leave it at that, and I'll circle back when I get there. But I enjoyed this. Bobby, did you enjoy it?
You know what? I did actually, because even when Steamboat had the headlock on for like 20 minutes or whatever, like it was still entertaining enough because him and Striker were still, early on. And then, the match does pick up eventually too. So yeah, the commentary actually kind of added to it for me, because I think with the original commentary, I would have been a little bored just because, again, he's in that headlock for like 15 minutes. And he has a really good job explaining, like, if you cut a guy's head off, the rest of his body doesn't work right. And that's fair. I respect that. But a little much, but I didn't hate it. I liked it a lot more, like you said yesterday before, I rewatched the 2 out of 3 Falls match. But it's fine,
Bob said, I respect it. I respect it. Good tactics, sir. I respect it. He does indeed work the headlock again. He does this kind of staggered shine whenever the speed increases, he kicks ass and then he goes back to the headlock. Steamboat says strike a lot. There is some really nice mat wrestling, which we get later on too. They don't always emphasize that, but when they do, man, those guys could move even through to 94. Yep. So there's some really good stuff here. I did really enjoy the match. What did you think?
I actually like the mat wrestling in this match better than the Clash. It's just that the Clash has more gravitas and obviously has the, Jim Ross and Terry Funk instead of Matt Striker and Ricky Steamboat doing commentary. I think this match is great. Actually, it's just, the Matt Striker
full strike.
Constantly asking
oh yeah,
teetering on kayfabe and not kayfabe with his fucking questions and shit. It gets old after a while, but the match is really fucking good. All the it's just like the mat wrestling and the half Nelsons and shit like that. That shit was popping me, man.
It is good stuff. Yeah.
It's that's where as you brought up, Cornette talking about how it's kind of like a meeting of, those two worlds. This is very 70s style mat wrestling here.
Yeah.
In the first 20 minutes or so, and it's really good shit. I thought they did a really good. I really liked the finish too, with the crossbody right at the end, and the crowd gets in the way. You can't see because the crowd's it's awesome. That was an awesome visual. This match is pretty great in my opinion. It's just hurt by the long 1 hour accompaniment of Matt Strike as we should call him,
Strike,
and Ricky Steamboat, who is interesting for about a half hour, and then he gets less interesting over time, but the match is actually excellent. I think it's in damn good fucking video quality for this match. Obviously, the Fed produced it, whatever, but or at least had the best copy. But this looked great for a kind of a lost match from spring of '84. This is awesome, and you can tell at this point, at this stage, Flair's even more polished. And Steamboat is even feels like an even bigger star. The face versus face dynamic was a little odd, but Flair ends up kind of playing the heel in the end, and we get the close finish at the 1 hour draw. But this was really great. I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised at how good this was, considering I remember it being really good, but I actually don't think it's that far off from the Clash match.
Interesting.
But it's just the Clash match has the TV production, better commentary, and everything surrounding it's better. And in some ways, I think Boogie Jam's actually better worked in the ring.
Yeah.
But everything else surrounding the Clash is more impactful, I think.
The other thing is, I think the 2 out of 3 falls step helps the Clash match too, because it allows you to kind of break the match up, right? I think inevitably when it's just head to head like this, it's challenging to keep things fresh. I mean, the shine, and I use it loosely because a lot of it is in the hold. But I mean, Steamboat takes the first half an hour of this match basically, and the fact they keep it moving is amazing. I mean, I'm with you. It's very, very good. This is a famous case of when they hit the bridge at 45 minutes too, which is unbelievable. Big time race to finish, an incredible crowd on just every momentum shift they're living and dying with. Alex, what did you make of this one, mate?
Yeah, I don't watch these matches in order. I was kind of just jumping around depending on where I was in the house, if I was on my computer, if I had Peacock or whatnot. And that it seemed the order I watched him in, the bridge came later and later every match, and I was just like, Jesus Christ. I can't believe no one's brought up yet that
Strike.
Ricky Steamboat, heading into this match at Boogie Jam, had just wrapped up a successful tour of Pancrase. He looks like fucking Katsuyori Shibata in his gear in there, man. He's got the black trunks, black boots, black knee pads, and the fucking white wrist tape, man.
He looks amazing, man. He really does. He looks incredible.
You know, you can see why Vince saw him as like a movie star, but of course Vince is an idiot and racist, so he just saw him as Bruce Lee. But you look at him here, there's good looks, he's chiseled physique. I mean, he wasn't I brought up Kerry earlier, so like Steamboat wasn't as like jacked as Kerry or some of those guys of the era, but he had one of the best physiques of his time period, just for like, because you could buy him still as athletic and not just some freak weightlifter. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is good stuff. This is neither of these upon rewatch. Neither of these upon rewatch are going to disrupt my order of going to dethrone Bockwinkel and Hennig for like my favorite Broadway ever. But the Oracle called it out. This one might get an edge for me just visually, because it is like some of the camera work is a bit avant-garde for its day in wrestling. Like, and so like I appreciate that. And it has kind of that sportatorium. It just looks so hot, and there's like that like just lingering steam and smoke above the ring, and obviously they're fucking blown up too in the Clash match, but by the end of this they're just like pouring sweat, and it looks so like gritty and also like down dirty athletic, jockeying for position type shit. So it's not a match in good conscience that if I talk to a kid who's 20 years old right now and is really into AEW, I'm going to tell them watch this match, because they're going to be like, what is this? But it's a fine piece of business.
There was actually, because I can't access any of these on the Derby Network anymore because it doesn't exist here, I had to like watch these on YouTube, like the good old days. And on one of them, there was a comment that goes, it was like, man, I don't care what any of the old heads say. All these moves are just the standard basic moves. I'm glad wrestling moved on from this. And I was like, God, it's stiff, man. It had like 10 upvotes. I was rattled, caught off guard. But yeah, I did think this was tremendous. And again, I mention it every time. We're going to mention it every time, I should say. God, there is no sight quite like when these two fellas go corner to corner with chops, right? When when the whole ring, the way they capture momentum with those chop exchanges, and it gets even better when JR gets on the call. But yeah, tremendous match for sure. So I guess this is kind of any Flair versus Steamboat, or Flair and Steamboat things to circle when we come to the end of the first act here. Like, obviously, if we were just doing both their careers, there's a bunch of stuff to circle, but between, against each other, or even if it's a tag with each other, anything to call out for Act 1s, anything before 89, I guess.
I would just say that this sort of, in terms of just like, this is sort of their rivalry before wrestling becomes like a household thing, right?
Yeah.
Or at least, at least the modern sort of thing we know with the WWF expansion and whatnot. Mm-hmm. This is like the territory stuff right here. And then 89 will be WCW, and 94 will be that, that last, obviously WCW too, but,
right.
Very, very, very different. But yeah, this, as far as their stuff, I've seen clips of their 70s stuff and it's quite good, but I don't know if there's like a 78 or 79 match that's like almost in full or something that's really good, but
yeah,
I'm not totally aware of anything else that I can think of.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Alex, anything you'd like to circle? I know there's one other match. I'm trying to find it here in Mid-Atlantic, and it's May 84. There's another match that got a lot of critical praise in New Jersey. My goodness. Alex, you aware of anything else, mate, the circle between these two?
That's fascinating. 89? That's dead fucking Vince McMahon territory in 84.
Yeah.
No, and just to skip ahead, I know there's like one, and this probably wouldn't even apply to our third act. There's only like one outlier I can think of that involves these two. So unfortunately, I'm not going to bring any of my random out of my ass, out of the hat. Did you know this happened? Knowledge to this one. So,
Well, I have just discovered that on this show, with the aforementioned Flair Steamboat match we did not cover, Carlos Colon wrestled Tully Blanchard.
Oh my God.
oof.
I mean,
Did they
that needs to
bleed?
be-
I was about to say hepatitis on a pole match.
They better fucking bled, dude. What else could they have done?
Shit.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. My goodness. I had no idea. Okay.
That was 84, you said?
Yeah.
9 years
May 8th.
later, Gorilla Monsoon would refer to Carlos Colon as that fiery youngster.
When he was like 48 years old.
He was already old in
And he-
84, man.
And he looked 60 too. He looked so old in that. God. Okay, wonderful stuff. Bringing Act 1 to a close. Bobby, do you have any advice, people that are enjoying this show so far, mate?
Yeah, if you're enjoying the show so far, you know, smash that like button. It's the first time. I guess unless you did it on your own, then don't do it again. But yeah, odd numbers. I know I haven't been around lately, so I hope someone has been picking up the mantle there.
Manny the Hooper, I apologize for pitching it to you when you were eating. That's my bad. I didn't realize.
No, I'm done. We're good.
Okay, all right, good. Bobby's back, folks. My apologies. Okay, there you go. The like button and all that stuff. All right, now, obviously, there's some big business in between our matches here. 84 to 89, and in that time, as Oracle referenced earlier, both guys are going to be, you know, big time players. Obviously, to different extents, but still big time players in the kind of wider explosion of wrestling. Right, Steamboat's move to the WWF would make him really an iconic figure, and the WrestleMania 3 match, for as much as people can retroactively kind of poke holes in it, and I may or may not have done that myself on this program before, I mean, great match on WrestleMania 3, that matters, right? That's a huge deal, and his fame and his stardom exploded in the World Wrestling Federation, and on the other side, Ric Flair is the king of Crockett for those years, and we are here about to jump into a timeline where, you know, Crockett is now Ted Turner's property. It's still the NWA, which they recently had a great conversation on Center Stage Chronicles about how hilariously they handled the name change and how it just kind of gradually just kind of went, oh, it's WCW. I don't know. You know, it always pops me.
Y'all always have to help me out with the timeline on that, like which belt was which belt, when it was called what. Yeah, so
it's fascinating. Like, these shows they're NWA shows. That's what they're called, you know.
I
but
can't
it's
imagine how confusing it would have been to been like a week to weeker watching this and being like,
Yeah.
all right, it's what now? World Championship who?
Yeah. But
Could you imagine like some fucking grandpa in like fucking outskirts of Greenville, South Carolina? Now what? Now is this?
They're taking my wrestling? Oh man. I'm gonna write Reagan about this.
So the point is, both guys have exploded. 1989 would be an all-time great year for Ric Flair, and I mean all-time great year in terms of Ric Flair's. I mean, Ric Flair's 99 would be an all-time great year in wrestling history, right? And he was 40 years old at the time. And this is the match that, in the grand scheme of things, kind of kickstarts that year, as you know, in the big picture. They shoot the angle with Steamboat. You know, they have the TV, or of course the TV main event. It's Barry and Flair and oh my God, who's Steamboat's
Eddie
partner?
Gilbert and
Eddie Gilbert. Yeah. The TV main event. They bring Steamboat back, and it sets the stage for this match, the first of their famed trilogy. On pay-per-view, or at least, you know, 2 pay-per-views in the Clash special, which we'll cover in a moment. Chi-Town Rumble, February 20th, 1989. I have so much to say about this. I actually watched these matches early enough that I got to sneak in a second rendition of this one, because I have much to discuss when it comes to Chi-Town Rumble. Very excited to do so. Contrarian Alex, Chi-Town Rumble, brother. Go for it.
This is the one.
Yes.
What I think of when
True. In so many ways, yes.
I have like visuals of I always remember the green and red, the white and black that we have in the other one coming up, and then so I can't remember which match it is. And then like 5 minutes in, it's like, oh no, it's this one. Like this is the one that I always think of when I think of the Steamboat Flair dynamic. That is my first note. This is one I always think of. Jim Ross gets to talk about football in the opening, so he's fucking full mast talking about Brad Muster and he talks about fucking Coach Ditka, and he got better about kind of weaving that into his commentary, but here he's just full on, oh god, football, my god. It's Magnum on commentary with him, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's just like, okay, yeah, Jim. Yeah, we get Big Dave in the front row with the Lloyd Christmas haircut, where someone just put a bowl on him on a fucking bar stool and spun him around and trimmed across. It's jokes aside, we have fun with Dave. I like Dave. Dave's a good writer. Obviously, his takes these days do not align with mine, but it's cool to see him fucking marking out the front row for shit here, and because I remember when he started going to Bola, and people were like, credibility. It's like there's one. Tim Thatcher wrestled Chris Hero at the 2015 Bola, and for me that's like porn. And Dave is like losing his shit in the front row during the whole match. Like he's just like pumping his fist and then taking notes and shit. I'm like, let the man have some fun here. The pace of this is unreal. Like we talk about this is sandwiched in between 2 hour-long matches, and you can tell because like the other ones that starts off, Ricky Steamboat grabs a hold for 30 minutes. Here it's just like boom, 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 boom. They're just going after it. It's fantastic. Chicago, always a bit of a rough town. We get a big Steamboat sucks chant there for a period in this match. They're wanting Flair to take this home. Jim Ross used this call in his WCW commentary, his NWA commentary. He never brought it to the WWF, which always made me really sad because it's one that is still quoted regularly amongst me and my chums, is when a pin is really close. Inches! We are talking inches! And then, and the idea of the ref's hand was just about to graze the mat, but he kicked out.
It's so great, though, right? It's so simple. Everyone can understand that. It's brilliant, man. Brilliant stuff.
At one point, Jim Ross declares that Ricky Steamboat is doing this for his son. He's doing this for every working class person.
Well,
I mean, look, if you've watched any WWF documentary that talks about Flair and Steamboat, the immediate talking point is Flair was this bombastic showman who traveled and partied, and Ricky Steamboat was a blue collar worker who had a family he loved at home. And so they're really trying to get this across here. Yeah, it's fantastic. We do the finish that's classic WCW NWA, where wasn't the original ref that jumps in there, it's Teddy Long, and so eventually they're able to manipulate that it didn't really count. But Tommy Young even agrees that it was the right call. There's these like 3 dudes who are probably in their mid to late 20s in like the third row, the big beer in hand, and when Flair gets beat, they do this. Oh no! Like they're so mad at the happenings of the evening. And I had to watch through because they did promise Bob Caudle would be with our world champion here shortly, and Bob Caudle and Ricky Steamboat getting doused in champagne. And well, Ricky, what do you have to say? Don't tell me you're at a loss for words, Ricky. You got to have something to say here.
As he's burning, his eyes are burning.
Dude, how do wrestlers not learn that? I can think of off the top of my head, of course, Hogan when he beat the Iron Sheik, where like you can tell he like got maced. Dr. Death when he won the UWH title or UWF title, and he's like backstage and just doing the same thing, but it's also Doc, so he's like screaming, so it looks terrifying. He looks like a bear that got tranquilized.
What about the one where Terry Funk totally ribs on when he joins when he joins Parker's faction, and Terry just pours it all over On's head? He's so mad, dude. He's kind of serious promo after his heel turn, and his eyes are fucking burning.
Well, that's what happens here, because fucking Doot Michael Hayes comes along and just aims it right at Steamboat's face, like shaking it with his thumb on the end of it.
Yeah.
Aha! I'm never gonna have to suffer any consequences in my career. Ha ha! That's what he says right at that point. But anyway, fantastic match. You got to think in a career of incredible world title matches, Ric Flair, that is, this ranks right up there at the top. And you mentioned it, to think this is the same year as the fucking I Quit match with Terry Funk and the shit he would go on to do. It's fantastic. we have a lot of good stuff to talk about still to come, but for me, this is like the peak of Steamboat and Flair.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Bobby, do you agree, mate?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. This is a tremendous piece of business. Like you guys kind of both mentioned it, just the pace, just everything about it. Like nothing feels wasted. One of maybe the best match that we've watched in the entire 3 years we've been doing this, which is crazy because we've covered a lot of good stuff. But this is special, man.
It is, and I think there's some kind of magic ingredients to this. I've always felt that way. Oracle, what did you make of Chi-Town Rumble upon rewatch, mate?
Oh yeah, this is fucking unbelievable, man. The whole thing is great. Like, I mean, we jest about JR, who's hilarious, but my God, what a performance by him in this match! Just unbelievable. Like those spots where they'd be going back and forth and like they do their rope running, pace, crazy shit. And my favorite was when Steamer hit Flair with a double chop, and Jerry goes, "Oh my, double chop, my God!" He's like, he's just losing his mind, and like, there's like this is one of those like Jim Ross performances that's like one of like 100 of them that are just unbelievable. But man, this match is just the finish, which is classic NWA horse shit, is whatever. But this match is just. I hadn't, I didn't have the time to go watch Wrestle War, but from watching all this in a row, and part of it was, I did watch 3 fucking 45+ minute matches in 3.5 hours. That I'm sure that affected my my opinion somewhat. As far as watching these matches in succession goes. I think this is the best one of the 6 we've watched.
Yeah,
like, this is just, I mean. The pace they work for 23:18? It's just, I don't even know. Like, and everything's so simple, but like, I don't know. You don't even see guys doing that stuff nowadays. Like, it's
it's
not,
different.
Not in the way that they're doing it. Like a lot of times guys will do like big spots, right? And they'll go at an incredible pace. But not like they're like doing like shoot cardio, like it's insane to watch. Still stands out even to this day,
Yeah,
it's just one of the best matches in American wrestling history. Still, I think.
Yeah, and it is hard to. Like, obviously, the work is amazing, right? The work is immaculate. Like. Those chop exchanges that Jim Ross just loses his mind for every time, and I think he speaks for all of us when he does so, right? It's amazing. The pace everyone's mentioned, their chemistry, all of it. The heel, babyface dynamic, which now is
finally
cemented.
Getting, finally beating Flair for the title, of course.
Yeah,
on top. But
there's something beyond the work and the match itself. There's just something idyllic about this whole thing. There's something magical about this whole thing. This, to me, is if I could wake up tomorrow and click my finger and get a wrestling promotion to present wrestling a certain way, this would be my blueprint, It
is one of about 25 or so transcendent matches in American wrestling history that are just like it sounds so cheesy and corny, but it's like it's above like it's basically, oh my God, it sounds so corny, but I'll say it. It's ephemeral almost. You know what I mean? It stands above the rest. It's one of those very 20, 25 or so matches, from the States that because then if you include Japan and Mexico, there's probably 50, 60, maybe even 70 matches like that. But it's one of those matches that just. You can't forget about and will always stand the test of time.
And it's all of it. It's the way the show looks,
the presentation, the crowd, the commentary, the work, the
feel,
the uniqueness of the match comparative to the rest of their matches. Like,
it just feels it's intoxicating. Like, feels about sports style wrestling. This is. I don't know if it ever got recaptured to this degree in the States, ever.
Right.
This feels like a heavyweight title fight. It's absolutely electric. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful piece of business. It sticks with me. It's one of those things, every time I watch it, that feel captures me. And again, that's not, so to speak, to understate the work, which is amazing. But I don't know. There's something about the way this show looked, the way this show sounds. Every single piece of it. It's overwhelming.
Tell just, I mean, we're obviously all, huge fans here. Chi-Town Rumble, you immediately know what that means,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you say Chi-Town Rumble, oh, yes. I know that. That's because even if you don't remember the match detail, I didn't remember the match detail for detail or anything like that. But I remember that's the short one with the insane pace where Steamboat wins the title. Shorter one. Like that's the memory I have of it. It's it's the 25 minute match with a crazy pace in Chicago. Like it's Chi-Town Rumble. Like you have that. These matches that have that title. You just say the name of the show. Like, Money in the Bank 2011, I mean, what else are you going to think of but Cena and Punk, right?
Right.
So, like, it has that, that status.
Yeah. The way those guys would use the rope running, the way those guys would use the space in the ring, how important it feels when Flair gets Steamboat to the corner to fire a chop and, all the drama that would unfold. Again, I keep saying it and I apologize, but the way it looks, the way that, Steamboat's tights, Flair's trunk, like all of it, man, all of it adds up. It's all 1% of the package. It's God, it's special. It's honestly, it's one of those matches that I actually take for granted how much I love it. Like, again, I said it earlier, if I had my way, this is how my wrestling would always be presented. It would never be this good, but I wish people would try and present it this way at least, and just try. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful. If you've never seen it, then
if you try to present it this way and do all the right things, eventually you're going to get every once in a while lightning in a bottle in a match like this.
I think so.
Happen,
Yeah. And I think it's such a shame that sports style wrestling is almost a meme now, and people think it means like blood sport. That isn't it at all. I want, with respect, I want the wrestling to still be the wrestling. I just want it to be packaged in a way that has this kind of prestige and power. And I think that's actually a big part of why 2010's New Japan spoke to people in the States, right? Because they had that. Of course, in Japanese wrestling, it's very different. But we have fun about Jim Ross and he's many ridiculous lines and he's football. But Jim Ross is calling this like it's the biggest sporting event in the world. And Magnum, and I love Bobby Heenan, and we get to Bobby Heenan later, and he's fun on that call. He's obviously a better announcer than Magnum, but Magnum feels like the ex-prize fighter that's in the booth calling the action. He feels like a legendary athlete who's just sat down. This is his new job, and it's like, again, I know that that's a strange thing. It's like you preferred Magnum on commentary to Bobby Heenan. No, but what I'm saying is in this match, it actually does work better than having Heenan doing his shtick because Magnum just feels like a guy who's wrestled at a high level and is there to call the action. So I don't know. I love this match. It's amazing.
Agreed.
One of my favorites ever. And for a lot of people, it isn't even the best of their trilogy. I would disagree. I think we're disagreeing, but this is debated, right, Oracle? We spoke about this before. Like, people debate for all three of these matches. So,
I used to love the Clash match the most, and now I'm not. I mean, I thought Chi-Town was clearly the match I preferred more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Clash of the Champions 6, the aforementioned Clash match, the rematch, Rage and Cage, and this is when the subtitle, the subheadings was April 2nd, 1989. This is the infamous Superdome show that drew like 5,000 people, which is...
Okay, I was going to ask if that was the one because...
Yeah.
What was the fucker's name that didn't want to advertise it? Was
Jim
that Jim Hurd? Yeah.
Because remember, they were up against Mania 5 on this show.
Yeah.
And the idea was that we don't want to advertise this show because we want to sell tickets for the house shows, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're up against fucking the Mega Powers Explode, which they weren't going to beat anyways, most likely, but still.
Yeah. But It is worth noting, because we'll do this once and never again, because who gives a shit? We're looking at the matches. It is worth noting for anyone out there who's watching, is a younger fan or a newer fan. This trilogy was not. In fact, American Dragon, it might be George Scott, because this is the era where George Scott's booking, he doesn't know who anyone is. It may be George Scott.
That's who it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
George Scott. Yes,
Jim Herd didn't deserve that straight. He did enough bad stuff on his own without getting given other people's stuff.
It's like a pie.
It is worth saying though, like the Flair Steamboat trilogy, the Flair Steamboat trilogy that we're talking about here 36 years later was not a box office, home run by any means. It was not this sort of triumph in terms of commercial success. Now, I don't give a shit about that. What I'm saying with that is people get way too married to tying critical acclaim and commercial success. Right? We see this across all things.
You imagine, I don't know about Bobby would have been there with his Hulkamania shirt on, but you imagine, we were all born several decades prior, and Oracle, you, myself, and Joe are, what we are right now. Can you imagine how proud we would have been to been NWA fans? Like at this point,
we would have been.
My God.
Yeah, Oracle and I have spoken about this before. Like, we'd have been really bad. I feel like when Hogan came to WCW, Oracle and I would have stopped watching wrestling. I think if we could transfer ourselves back, it would have been so nasty. But yeah, we'd have been loyalists, man. On the timeline all day, just throwing bombs, just fighting for our lives, burying Hogan.
Trying to figure out how to get Savage to the NWA.
Yeah.
He's too good for the WWF, man.
Dude, crazy though. That was a big Observer story at the time. Are you aware of this? This really intrigued me recently. So, in '89, when Flair gets the book, he has like a list of targets. It's like DiBiase, Hennig, Brett, Piper is talked about at one point. And one name that comes up in the Observer is Savage. And on Center Stage Chronicles, they were losing their mind about, like, what would this look like? Could you imagine?
Oh my God.
I mean, there's no way it ever happens, but just the idea of it is fascinating.
Him cutting a shoot promo on Hogan on his debut, and people are like, what the fuck's he talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Bro. All right, so Clash of the Champions, 2 hour free falls, the rematch here for Chi-Town Rumble. Terry Funk is on commentary, which obviously would later become very topical, and God, I love Terry Funk on commentary so much, man.
Awesome. I think him here. I think JR is like kind of he's good here, but I think he's like
he's subdued because
he's subdued. I think he's like dreading having to call a 60-minute match.
I think it's the fact that he's office and he's realised they've drawn 5,000 people at the Superdome. And he knows he's got to get in a car with Jim Cornette, who's going to yell for fucking 3 hours about George Scott. He does seem subdued here, man. He does. I'm with you. But
Terry has. I can't remember what Terry. He said he had other plans or something, but he's like, but this is the World Heavyweight Championship. I wasn't going to miss this, Lou Thez is here.
Yes. He takes the Magnum blueprint I just mentioned and perfects it. He is not just an ex-prize fighter in the booth. He is an iconic, grappler, and he's cool. Oh,
my favorite part of the whole match is when he's like, he's talking like he's a message board poster. Well, some folks prefer Chi-Town Rumble.
Yes. That actually, jokes aside, that does give you an idea. When Dave talks about his conversation with Terry, that does give you an idea as to how deep in Terry was. He goes, this has got to be the match of the year. Some folks will prefer. And he's talking like we're doing it on a show. It's wild, man. He's incredible on this. And this match is great. I prefer this match to Boogie Jam we discussed earlier. I think 2 hour free falls helps a lot because it allows you to break the action up and tell kind of individual stories. I think they do a really good job of that here. It has that great prickly nature at the bell. And you best believe it, Bobby. We're back to the Steamboat headlock. Flair does have some learned psychology, though. Flair has the pin attempts on those early, so there's that. But Bobby, what did you make of the Clash match here, mate?
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. It was different, pacing wise from the other hour long match, like you talked about. Like we had the headlock, but they broke it up a little bit. Flair went outside and stalled for a little bit. Like they were able to kind of put some new beats in there. Yeah, as for the match itself, first of all, it took 4 matches, but we finally get the RICK Flair. I know we just see it at some point. We did not expect it on the actual Titantron, but but yeah, I mean, this one didn't feel like an hour. And the other one, you know I had fun with the commentary or whatever, that kind of kept me busy, but this one just kind of flows so well. You know, I think Terry Funk points that out with like 50 minutes past, be like, oh, I thought it's only been 5 minutes or whatever, which obviously is exaggerating a little bit, but it's such a well-paced match. Like, that's the one thing that they really figured out too, was how to pace these hour-long matches, which obviously they did a bunch of them. But yeah, you know, you go with the chicken wing, and then like, the finish, I get it. Yeah. Like, it sets up the next match. Like, I don't love it, but like, they do a good job explaining it in case you are watching it in a vacuum. So like, whatever. I mean, but yeah, the match itself is very good. I definitely preferred it to the other hour-long match we saw.
Yeah, I'm with you on the flow. I think it is paced very, very well. The work is obviously amazing. I agree with Jake's point in our chat that Flair like ramps up the nastiness here because he's lost the belt and he's now chasing it, you know, and that's a position that's different for him, especially opposite Steamboat, a first-time champion. I like the way they have more. It's still a staggered Steamboat shine, but there's more back and forth to keep you guessing rather than it just being like Flair's bumping at every turn. Flair has flashes. He just can't contain Steamboat. And he's extra colourful here compared to 84 also. But the big thing here, to me anyway, is always just as a showcase of just stamina, right? I mean, they're so physical with one another. They push such a great pace. And, I mean, remarkable, really, how they're hanging in there later in the match. And also, this is important, they don't wrestle later in the match in a showy way of, look at us, we're not even tired. They wear the fatigue, and that's great, right? You feel it. You feel how tired these guys are, and that's a good thing. It shouldn't, like Terry Funk said what he said, and I agree with what your point was, Bob. It was paced well, but sometimes people say it doesn't feel like them wrestling 30 minutes. It's like, it really should on some level, you know? Yeah. And I know Terry was putting the match over, and you were doing the same, but what these two do great with is their stamina's incredible. They're not trying to impress you with that. They're actually showing you, look how tired we are. Mm-hmm. Look at the fatigue, and that adds a lot, I think. Oracle, you said earlier this was, previously this was your centerpiece of the rivalry. Less so this time. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think this match is still like, obviously a great match. Terry, I'd totally forgotten that Terry Funk, because he's a judge at Wrestle War, right? And he does commentary here. Yeah. Of course, Wrestle Wars. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But yeah, this is probably paced better than the Boogie Jam match in terms of pace and structure and like the breaks and stuff like that.
Right.
I think Boogie Jam had a better crowd, right? Greensboro.
Agreed.
And I think, yeah, I mean, there was literally this looked like the Smoothie King Center in 2021, Raw or something. Yeah. Not fucking like. Not, the fucking Louisiana Superdome. And I think the actual stuff that they did, like, I really enjoyed the mat work in Boogie Jam. But I did like I really love the chicken wing in this match. Like, the chicken wing's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I love that as a submission for the second fall. I always forget that this match doesn't go the full 60. It goes like 55 minutes and ends on the weird. What was it, like a double pin or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But this was always my favorite, and I think this match was hurt somewhat by the fact that I'm an idiot and watched this stuff in 3 hours and 45 minutes and didn't separate the two 60-minute matches very much at all, other than Chi-Town right in the middle. If I were to watch the trilogy throughout, like even watching the trilogy in one sitting is not that terrible of an idea, but I might think a little bit more highly of the match. I do think I prefer Boogie Jam in some ways in terms of the work, but the overall presentation of this match, I still prefer, like, even with Steamboat coming out with I guess that was Richie, wasn't it? In the dragon costume.
Yeah.
But this is obviously still a great match. I really want to see Wrestle War again. I might watch that in the next week or so to come. But this was always like my favorite of and part of it was when I was a kid, like you sort of I bought the idea that like if a match went longer, it was better. And that's not
that's a
meant,
huge trapping of like young fandom. I get what you mean. Yeah,
but yeah, like so it was a match that like that gravitated towards me. I was like, oh shit, an hour, like 55-minute match. Oh shit. So like that was super cool to me as a kid too.
It is the highest rated on the Beloved Cage match, you know. So
when you're like
count for something, right?
I don't know, Oracle, if you're your brother might have. I don't know if he ever talked about it, but when you're early in your super smart phase and you learn about that Chris Hero CM Punk match that went 93 minutes, you're like, oh my God.
Oh yeah. Oh, that and the fucking, what was it? The Danielson Aries, which isn't even that good, like the 75-minute match too, or whatever.
I bought that. That's when Ring of Honor was still selling VHSs, and when that came out, I bought that on VHS. Yeah, they go like 80 minutes, which sorry, Joe, taking over your show here.
Go for it.
The original plan for that match was they were going to go 3 hours, and it was going to be a 60-minute draw for each fall in the 2 out of 3 falls match. And then Gabe came to his senses at the last minute. So.
Thank God.
There's a CZW match that was Messiah, Adam Flash, Sick Nick Mondo, and maybe Justice Payne. It was this fatal 4-way that went like 65 minutes at the old ECW arena, you know, with the CZW crowd of like 300 people there that just had their arms folded the whole time, just shaking their head.
You did a tweet about it recently, and I popped so huge. It's like the culture is so different, right? It's just very, very different, very, very different vibe. It's like trying to pop me, just feel just sitting there like, it's fine. One of the things I love about this match is in the second fall, suddenly he's 1-0 down and he's got to defend his belt here, and Steamboat goes for the leg. I love that when he has the elbow drops the leg and how desperate he feels. Always loved that. And again, I think the match does a nice job of keeping things moving, changing, doing different directions. Flair later responds with his own leg work. That's kind of a dueling set piece for getting the Saturday Night match too. Alex, what did you make of this one, mate?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have all covered it pretty well. This is going to sound so weird, but like this match, I've always kind of had in my adult years, had a hard time getting into because of the lighting and also Flair's a bit puffy here. He might have had, a drink or two the night before, but with the black trunks and black boots, he looks so much like Buddy Landell here. So every time it takes my brain like 20 minutes to adjust to the fact that it's not Ricky Steamboat versus Buddy Landell. I know it's a very weird individualistic thing, but it's something that sticks out for me. Oracle mentioned Richie that he brings out. This is so stupid. I don't know if anyone will find this funny, but me and my buddy had this joke when Steamboat had that comeback in 2009 that when he wrestled Jericho, he should have brought out Richie Steamboat fully grown, but in the little dragon outfit and carried him to the ring with him. So every time I see that, I of course think of that and how hard we laughed at that idea. We're kind of already getting into our trail of repetitiveness of they are doing like the same stuff we've seen, but even if they're doing it in different order, it tells a different story to the match. And it's like, you can't go wrong with it. The length of it is similar to Oracle. I watched these matches in 2 parts, but both of the hour matches fell in the same part. And so it's like, so my head's a bit kind of mixed up with the feelings about it, but it's great. The true hallmark of this, because it's not always, people just say now, like, you can't do an hour-long match because you can't keep people's attentions because of phones and shit. That's good enough. Like, remember a couple of years ago, Roman Reigns and Edge went like 45 minutes and the crowd was like completely into it the entire time?
Yeah, you can do it. You definitely do it.
Yeah, and that's just an example here, though, of the other side of that applies too. In 1989, if shit sucked, these people wouldn't have been as into it by the end as they were. And when they do that one shoulder up finish, the crowd's just going fucking mental, losing their mind about it. In the end, though, how long did Steamboat end up? He was never like a long champion, right? He
drops it at Wrestle so another month. Yeah,
Two and
another
a half.
month. There's 3
Yeah,
months.
2.5.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
two and a
February
half. Yeah.
20th was Chi-Town, and then May 7th, I
May
think, Wrestle War.
7th. Yeah, 7th.
Yeah, so
He was just
10
one of
weeks.
those eternal baby faces, right? Like Jeff Hardy, that him winning the title was the story. Like the title reign wasn't the.
And we're about to get into the kind of politics of Wrestle
He's
War.
a better wrestler than Jeff Hardy. Just to put that out there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Basically, Steamboat's reign is just like in order to serve the trilogy, right? That's basically what it's doing here. It's just to give the trilogy juice. And to that point, and before we move on, again, last couple of things. At one point, Terry Funk calls it the best match he's ever seen. And Jim Ross swiftly uses that to bury the World Wrestling Federation and does his classic, we're not here to taunt, we're not here to flex. He would be doing that. Yeah, he would do that exact thing for the WWF about 6 years later. But nonetheless,
it's not about covering a bald spot.
Yeah, Wrestle War 89. We'll talk about the match in a second. Politically, this is really quirky because I didn't know this until I listened to Lap's Fan about the rivalry. So they never told Steamboat they were doing the Terry Funk angle.
Yes,
so,
that's right.
This is so pro wrestling. Steamboat thought they were going to do more matches. And like, according to him anyway, or according to the sheets at the time, he's on the way, he's leaving the ring and he realizes, oh my God, they just did a whole angle to basically move on from me. And so that's why he's not long for, he does the stuff with Luger, which is, we've talked about the Bash match for, which is great, but he's on his way out of the territory soon. Before we get into that and what they do in between 89 and 94, Wrestle War, Oracle, you haven't had a chance to rewatch it. I saw it not long ago because Papa Holbert and I did the trilogy. I thought it landed as like a middle ground between the first two matches in that it's longer than Chi-Town. So it doesn't have the same frenetic pace, but it also doesn't have... I actually did think it was the distant third, and I thought it was still great, but I did think it was distant. On your memory, again, I know you haven't had a chance to rewatch it. Do you remember where you stood on Wrestle War?
So the things I remember about Wrestle War are the overall sort of pre-match with the goofy judge shit and the post-match. It's my favorite presentation of all of them.
It's amazing, yeah.
But I do remember thinking it was like the third best match.
Yeah.
From like bell to bell. The judge stuff, isn't fucking Jason Hervey one of the judges, or is that later? No, he shows up in WCW later, right? Because he's like he owns.
He might be there, dude.
He might be there. Yeah.
Was that when he's dating Missy Hyatt?
Yes, possibly.
I think so.
Because the Wonder Years was a thing at that time. 88 to 93 was Wonder Years, maybe. But great show, by the way, if you've never seen it. But
yeah.
The angle, the post-match angle at Wrestle War 89 is the greatest angle in the history of American wrestling, in my opinion. It is like, I don't think it's just, it is. That was when we got the Flair DVD, the first one, in like winter of 03 or whatever. So growing up, my dad used to talk about, he would just bring it up randomly when I was a kid. And I didn't even know, like for years, I didn't know what he was talking about. He'd go, hey, Dylan, you remember the time Terry Funk put a plastic bag over Ric Flair's head on Clash of Champions? There you go. So we would literally turn it on. This is not a joke. For years in the 2000s, 5, 6, 7 years, Dad would go, oh, let's watch Terry Funk and Flair. Let's watch that. So we'd watch the Wrestle War match, and we'd watch and then some. Then we got to the point we would just watch the angle.
Of course.
And this was like a tradition in my family for like years. This is not an exaggeration.
Fair.
And like we literally quote like all the time. Oh, I didn't mean to challenge you, Rick. I didn't mean to challenge you.
You're out there brushing shoulders with Sylvester Stallone. You got to work your way back up to the top, baby.
The top 10.
I think the top 10. That's it. Yeah.
Terry, that is. We've discussed it before, but that angle is just a snapshot of all the greatness of Terry Funk. And look, Jim Ross and Flair are great in it too. But What an angle, man!
Oh,
Unbelievable.
it's like I said, and I mean this seriously, sincerely. It's the best angle in the history of American wrestling.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So just to close the loop on this,
Yes,
on this Ric Flair DVD set, the match for the Steamboat chapter is Wrestle War '89.
Yeah.
So the Chi-Town Rumble
off, yeah.
it has to be. I know it's on one of the sets I own, so it's
I
probably one of
believe
those.
it's the second Flair one, or it's either might be Steamer.
Yeah,
It's on the WCW pay-per-view one. I know that.
Yes, it is. It is on
Yeah.
WCW Pave as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Bob, have you seen the Wrestle War match, mate?
Yeah, I think because I did watch all three of them. I haven't seen it since
Right. That's fair enough.
quite some time.
Yeah. So, Alex, before we move on, anything on the Wrestle War? I know you're not you don't have a clear memory necessarily of the individual pieces. Anything to note before we move on, mate?
no, it's the trilogy part that we're here in the midst of is.
Yeah.
I find it hard to find. I find it hard to find any issues with it. I'll just say that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So Steamboat, as I just mentioned, is not long for NWA or WCW, and he does that brief return right to the WWF.
He has a rough couple of years until he comes back and teams with Dustin, which we covered here on Grin Grappler.
Yes, exactly that. So he formally returns, ironically, as kind of part of a 1-2 punch in response to the loss of Flair, right? I mean, Flair leaves in the summer and they're really struggling. A lot of people remember that kind of Rude comes in at Havoc, Steamboat's there at Clash, and it's sort of, okay, we got some weaponry again, we got some heavy artillery.
And Flair was having a rough 91 before he
Yes.
He was still good in the ring, but it was tumultuous with him and
good in the ring, but he drops off. He's 91. He's working 91. He's not even
still
close.
Incredible in 90, I think. I think he's awesome in 1990.
I think.
Right.
I'm trying to think. I do like the Luger stuff. Yeah, I'd probably go. He's just, you can tell he's starting to battle his own doubts. You know.
Is there any crossover of their time in the WWF?
No.
Don't think so. No.
I think Steamboat's gone literally the week Flair debuts on TV. Let me look this up. Hold on.
Okay, look that.
That sounds right.
That's interesting. I didn't really. Can you imagine how weird that would have been? Them wrestling on just doing a random TV match in the WWF.
Yeah, some house show match.
You would have done it too if Steamer was still around, because they did the El Matador stuff with Tito and Flair. Yeah,
Flair does some really wacky. He does a fucking TV match with Slaughter, which is bonkers shit, dude. Yeah, he's okay. So
so they do overlap some. So Steamer's last match is October 20th, 91 with Skinner in Saginaw, Michigan.
Oh, so they definitely overlap. Yeah.
So they overlap for sure, because Flair's first. Oh shit!
Wow, I didn't think he was there. That's crazy, man. Didn't think of that. Oh, I didn't think he was that deep in the year. Flair shows up. He works the London show with Tito. So
I think Steamer works SummerSlam '91, or maybe not. Does he?
Oh, I don't know.
Steamer SummerSlam '91. Yes, he's in the opening 6 man.
Oh yeah.
It's Steamboat, Davey Boy, and Kerry Von Erich against Power and Glory and the Warlord, maybe.
They overlap a lot then. That's a 4 or 5 month stretch almost, right? 4 months.
Flair's first match is against Jimmy Powers on Challenge
on
September 10th, 91.
Okay, so 2 months, yeah.
Yeah, so there's basically the fall of 91.
Because
I'm trying to think they worked the same show, and they probably worked one of the same shows, because on the same day, Flair and Piper, because they're still doing the multiple loops in the early 90s. So Flair and Piper was in Fort Wayne, Indiana on the same day, I think.
So a couple months there.
There's one person that could have corrected us on Jason Harvey, that my buddy Adam. So thanks for that one.
Thank you, Adam.
So I tried to find it. I didn't dig deep enough, but the first WWF event I ever went to, I was 4 years old, and I have a picture from it of Ricky Steamboat blowing the huge fireball on the. It was at Reunion Arena. He wrestled the Brooklyn Brawler in the co-main event of the evening.
Wow. So as Oracle mentioned, following his incredible all-time great 1989, the political kind of challenges of Flair's role in WCW or NWA become a real issue. He resigns as Booker in February of 1990, and as Oracle said, is very tumultuous. Before that, and then obviously from that point forward, there is the infamous tale of him being told to cut his hair and change his look and such, and he really loses his mind, to be honest with you, which, I mean, that would imply a state of mind I don't think he ever quite had anyway, but he definitely is in a weird point in the early 90s. And that carries over to the WWF run. Don't have an out asked if it's good or bad. My genuine answer is it's somewhere in the middle, because I think there is really good stuff there, but there's also times where he legitimately appears to just be completely out of ideas.
We're talking about Flair?
Yeah, Flair's WWF run is... History has been very kind to it because people remember the Rumble,
I was about to say that's one of the single greatest performances a wrestler's ever had. Yeah,
and he does have I like the Savage match at WrestleMania, and he has some really good performances beyond that. But he also has matches where he feels like a guy playing a routine no one wants to hear anymore. It's very strange.
The match where he loses the title to Brett is very weird that way.
Yes,
he's just kind of
just doing
rummaging through a garage sale that has all his old shit in it.
Flair's Fed debut is awesome, and the Piper stuff is like that great angle where Piper swings a chair and hits Vince when Flair ducks or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's a great program. And then the initial Hogan stuff is a lot of fun. The Rumble is incredible, and I like the Savage match a lot.
Yeah,
but there's a 6-month period between Mania 8 and when he drops the title to Brett, where it's totally uninteresting and not very. And I do like the Hennig program. I do like the Perfect program.
I recently rewatched the Raw match. I actually liked it a lot. Yeah,
but that 6-month gap in '92 is not. It's really not very good.
To be honest, the best stuff you'll find in that time period of Flair is shit that's been on those unreleased DVD sets where it's just random pairings where he gets to do whatever. I've never seen it. I've heard divisive things on it. Oracle, our buddy in Hollywood Elite, John Bolo Keating, was in attendance for the Iron Man match between Brett and Flair. It's one of those that one day I'll watch, but mixed reviews on that one, I know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's times where the crowd's reaction to Flair is kind of damning too, right? It definitely happens at times. So, regardless, eventually Flair would return, and he returns to a WCW in which Ricky Steamboat has been producing some really, really strong work as one of the lead baby faces. Of course, we've covered before the Rude. No, we haven't covered Rude Steamboat. We just talked about it a lot on the Rude episode, right? We didn't cover it. We did, but we talked about it so much. My apologies. But
we had that idea of what more is there going to be to say.
Yes, exactly that. The Iron Man. Obviously, he's in War Games '92. He's great in his WCW return. And naturally, him and Flair are in the same place. Flair comes back as a babyface, so there's a little bit of a delay there. They do have a couple matches before the ones we're about to cover, or before the series we're about to cover. They had a house show match in the summer of '93 when Flair had the big gold. He wins the big gold from Wyndham before he drops it to Rude. And they had a match in November '93 in Germany that I bet the atmosphere for that was incredible, dude. That sounds so fun. Flair Steamboat in fucking Germany. That's wild. So
that's the show where Foley lost his ear, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. So eventually, it's time to do Flair Steamboat, because Flair, just like in '89, gets, he's the champion, some political stroke. I would like to wrestle Ricky Steamboat, please. And so that's the plan here. And it is Spring Stampede initially, in April of '94. Now, I love that match. One thing that is very noticeable about that match is it is not the sort of mouth-watering fault that it was in 1989 to the crowd in attendance. It's a very different feel. I love the match regardless. But Steamboat in particular is receiving a slightly different reaction by '94. Not necessarily a negative one, and granted, Chicago booed Steamboat in '89. But wrestling's changing, right? I guess would be the way to put it. And you kind of feel that in this reunion here in '94. We are not covering Spring Stampede. We are covering WCW Saturday Night. May 14th, 1994. It is taped. Yes, mate.
I was just going to say, to your point, though, about wrestling changing, I think one of the we're not talking about Spring Stampede, I know, but one of the things to call out the significance of that, the match that stole the show that night and everyone was talking about was the Nasty Boys against Max Payne and Foley in like a fucking, just plunder brawl. And so Steamboat and Flair in the main event didn't have like the same luster that it had hilariously, not even 5 years prior to this.
Right. And I mean, the month after Stampede is the Philly Slamboree, right? Am I correct in saying? Yeah.
Where Sting got out of the ring because he was worried they were going to riot when he won.
Yeah, I mean that captures where things are trending, and it is relevant to this, and it's part of why history has somewhat lost these matches to an extent. By comparison to the '89 trilogy. This was taped just 4 days after Spring Stampede, which I think is interesting. Stampede was their first televised match since Wrestle War '89. Of course, those house show matches I mentioned. It allows us to get a center stage match in there, which feels fitting for two guys with this, with this identity in wrestling. And man, this is great. I think this is actually one of the best straight up TV matches, not Clash of the Champions in like WCW history. I think it's that good. I really think this match is great. It has issues, granted, but it is very noticeable how different the promotion surrounding them is, and it takes a minute to adjust. Alex, what did you make of this Saturday night match here? Go for it.
So I think you just answered it. This was center stage. Was this? It wasn't free admission, was it, for these shows?
I think it was. Yeah, I believe so.
Because these were just fucking marathon tapings, right? That would go on for 8 hours or whatever.
Yep.
Because that's the first thing we need to call out about this is that fucking the crowd. Half the crowd doesn't seem to understand, who exactly they're watching, and the crowd is not quite as electric. It made me pop huge when the crowd's just not really responding. So Flair does the thing where he lets go of like a headlock and he stands up and goes, "Hey, shut up!" At the crowd. That wakes him up a little bit. It's such a strange dynamic from where we started to see them in the mid '90s Saturday night venue, like with the fucking the hazmat tape on the outside of the ring around the fucking pads and shit. They do the bridge 30 minutes in, which we're 12 years after where we started with these two men, and that's pretty damn impressive. Good superplex that gets no response, and Flair's trying, man. God, and we haven't covered. I think with the exception of the Japanese match, every other match has featured the backing off from Steamboat. So we get the classics here. For me, with this match and it's good. It's really good. It's unfortunate the crowd's not as into it as the crowd could have taken it to another level of good for me. So the saving grace is Heenan on commentary. Every time they have to go to a commercial, he's like, "Why? No!" And he does that shit.
He's amazing, dude.
And then when they get to past the half hour mark, and he's talking about, the good things. These guys are such veterans. They've done this for so long. They know their way around that ring. They know where everything is. It's kind of like you, Tony, when you have to sneak back into your house at 4 or 5 in the morning. You know where to put your shoes. You know where to step. And just burying Tony Schiavone in his extramarital affairs on the air there, I thought was pretty fantastic. Randy Anderson really fucks up the momentum of the match at one point where he forgets that Flair is on the defense, not the offense. And Flair grabs the rope, so Randy Anderson, just is used to kicking his hands out from the illegal momentum point of view. So that kind of derails momentarily, but then we get it's the same thing, right? The cross body that takes out the ref and Ric Flair. Yeah. And then the low blow finish. It's a match that's good, that could have been great, I think, under the right circumstances.
So, because I brought him up earlier, I think it's worth circling back because Bobby's great here. And I'm glad you praised him after what I said earlier, in which I put him below Magnum TA on the color commentator rankings. But would you agree it is jarring when he does his shtick and Flair and Steamboat are it? Because I find it to be unsettling. Like, it rattles me legitimately. I'm like, well, it's just weird, man. It's because Bobby's doing Bobby, and it's great. But it's different for this kind of match. It's very strange. Hard to put your finger on.
And it's when you watch these matches in close succession, this is something that's like, oh, this is a different wrinkle. But exactly like you said, it's like, this was Jim Ross calling it like it was the fight of the century 10 years ago, and now Heenan's just doing his shtick, which there's a time and a place. But yeah, I agree with you. Dude, Steamboat looks weird, though, coming out here. Like, he's got half of his WF gear. He's not wearing the big headdress. I guess that didn't make the move from Stanford, but like, he has half of that on, but then he's got like this new GQ comb over look and shit. Yeah. He just looks like, no disrespect to Ricky, because he clearly still had gas in the tank here, but he looks like, when you would catch a guy who was once in the WWF on like some buttfuck indie show on the way down. Like, he's got half his gear and like a new haircut that looks weird, an 8x10 with a picture of him and Mr. T to sign, so it's, he could still go though.
Yeah, I think I genuinely, my guess is he was one of the free guys that was smart enough to realize I have to drop the muscle mass in order to be able to do this when I'm older, because a lot of the guys just kind of went, well, I will just get bigger. Yeah. Surely that will help. But yeah, he's still quick here. He definitely does look, he doesn't exactly scream like, wrestling, box office movie star attraction here the way he did in 1984 or whatever. So
he does not have the LJN physique any longer.
He does not. He does not. He has the good old-fashioned Mattel Elite, brother. It's very different. The Oracle of Wrestling. Saturday Night, 1994. What did you think, mate?
Oh, yeah. Still holds up. Still a great match. Dare I say, the definition of a wine match, I would say.
I agree.
Very much a wine match. Maybe little white Zinfandel or something, to sip on while you're enjoying this.
Beautiful.
But this is I agree. The most jarring part is just like, you're watching Flair and Steamboat do their thing, and like Bobby Heenan's on commentary.
It's so weird.
It's a great example of that juxtaposition is a great example of how wrestling was changing in 1994, and how mad Joe and I would have. And like,
yeah,
I love Heenan, but like, imagine how mad Joe and I would have been at like Halloween Havoc 94 or whatever.
You and I going live after Saturday night, get really mad about it. Oracle tweeting, please shut the fuck up at Bobby Heenan.
I can just imagine like how like I feel like I would have gotten so mad by the end of 94 that when Vader becomes the number one contender, I would have been like, Leon, please shoot on Hogan, just please. I would be like cheering for Vader, not just in the sense of like I'm a bigger fan. Like I would have been like desperately pleading for him to hurt, Terry Bollea. But
bravo.
Of course, I'm sure Terry thought, I'm sure he was terrified of that too, because he was terrified of that for anybody.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is an awesome match. This is like Flair. I like how they use the Steamboat rivalry and the Steamboat program to slowly turn Flair heel, right? And then he fully turns heel at the Clash in Charleston in June when they unify the world and international.
Sherry.
And then Sherry, Sherry joins him, but this was and this was kind of the first, because Spring Stampede's a double pin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Spring Stampede's, and it's much more like face versus face kind of vibe. This one, Flair leans more heel, and you can tell because his promos, he's calling out Hogan and all this stuff,
and it benefits the match too.
And then of course he wins by cheating with a low blow. And I really like that, more so than anyway. I like the match. Obviously, the work's great, but it's also a good sort of character development from Flair in the match in terms of like what he becomes. And he's like insane in the Hogan feud. He's great in it, but like he's like the Flair Sherry pairing is like totally insane, and we'll cover that in great detail here in a minute. But this match is excellent. Not as good as the other two matches. Not as good as the other two long matches, I don't think. But in terms of like really, really enjoyable TV wrestling, this is way up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this would be second for me of those three. What I love about this is the kind of spirit of it, in the sense that I think there was a little bit of frustration among these two fellas about the way their match was received at Stampede.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of the most inspired Flair performances of the 90s. And you can tell he is squeezing every bit of, like, everything he has left, you get in this match, dude. Even if you don't like it, it's obvious.
They do some different stuff in this.
Yes.
They work a little bit differently here. And honestly, my favorite spot of the whole match was when Steamer slips on the ring apron and almost busts his ass.
Yeah.
He does
Like-
a dive, like, you know, for a Ricky Steamboat, but he does like the springboard to the top rope, and he tries to do the axe handle the outside and eat shit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a very obvious motivation, which I think adds a great deal of charm, especially where the lads are at in their career at this point. I mean, how many people are there at center stage, dude? A few hundred in there for free. These fellas are hustling like their career depends on it. Like that's greatness, right? Bobby, you've watched this run, so you can speak a little bit to the context. What did you make of the match here on rewatch, and help paint the picture of people of how weird WCW this time? It's like 3 different promotions.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you know, Hogan's coming in, obviously, it's pretty clear at this point. So, like, this is kind of the end of, you know, that era of not having Hogan, whatever you want to call it. Things are about to change. And it's kind of nice that they went back to Flair and Steamboat one more time. Like, I know the Spring Stampede match and this match, like, it's not the heights that they reached that we saw earlier, but it's kind of cool to go back to that one more time just because, you know, things are going to change. It's going to be different. It's never going to be the same, for better or worse. And I like this match a whole lot. And I think, you know, yeah, there are some flaws to it, but yeah, I think just for what it is, it's a really good, important piece of business.
They hit the mat early, like it's 1984. They wrestle with a great deal of speed and snap on the mat, which I really appreciated. Hilariously, this is like the arm drag match on our lineup, which sounds ridiculous because it's a Steamboat show. But that's not really his line of attack against Flair necessarily, right? In this match, he works the arm a little bit, and you get a lot more arm drags, which was cute.
A lot of hip tosses
way,
elsewhere, but
yes.
yeah, we get some arm drags here. Yeah.
I love the way they make the match's first punch count. Flair's getting out wrestled, and he ducks down and hits Steamboat in the stomach. Oh, that's just what a great transition. Obviously, the chops are still there and sound as wonderful as ever. They really push the pace. Dueling leg work again. The one I would say about the match again, because I love the match, they definitely went 5 minutes too long. Like 100% went 5, because you can feel in the finishing run of this match, they're just out of ideas, man. They've worked so hard, they've pushed such pace. That one, when they go into the finish, they literally go into it with just like shoulder tackles, because they're out of ideas, man. It's just, you know, they're just everything they can do, they're throwing it at the wall, and they've got nothing left in the last 5 minutes. A little bit of restraint, I think this would actually been. I think with a trim, this would be like an actual classic. But obviously, I seem to be a little bit the higher man, which is fine. But love this match, and I love the Stampede match too. They're both great. Now, something that's very different follows this, because as just mentioned by Bobby, and as we've all kind of circled, you know, lots about change. I mean, Hulk Hogan and Ricky Steamboat is not, I mean, he's not going to be a full-time wrestler for much longer.
Nope.
And for that matter, I mean, Flair is going to retire at Halloween Havoc. So like, if you're a Flair Steamboat guy by October, you're fucked, dude. It's over. It's finished.
It would have been it for us. Joe and I would have been, hey, you know, the ECW thing's getting big. Let's.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
Just was it 94? Yeah, it was 94. I was like, all right, so Oracle, you know, the Bret Hart 1, 2, 3 Kid match gets a bunch of like momentum. Oracle just tweets, you know, well, hold on.
Yeah. I have a Bret Hart banner.
And no, it'd be Vince Jr. cooking? Question mark.
Oh fuck! I just realized. Imagine Twitter during the trial. Oh my God.
I'm not going to say his name, but there'd be a journalist out there with the dailies, you know, just, you know, 1500. Here's the latest on the Vince McMahon trial. With the fucking little note in his hat.
While we're on this, we have to just say it because we've done it way back in the olden days of the Grim. For anyone who's not heard us discuss this, if you could take Twitter back to any point in wrestling history, the obvious answer is actually the Monday Night Wars, because imagine what Eric Bischoff would have done with a Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, imagine quote tweeting Vince in the middle of the show, owned, like, get fucked at Vince McMahon. Like,
can you imagine how many fucking burners Paul Lee would have had? I mean, more so than he does now.
Just, oh my goodness, the DMs.
Oh my god! You think the WCW fanboys in like 99, 2000 would have been? Imagine the ECW fans on Twitter.com and like the summer of 2000.
Oh, dude, and all the fucking Bob and all the Fed boys when Dean Malenko won PWI 500. Who? Exclamation point?
Yep.
Question mark.
Who would be the most over wrestler in history, in pre-social media years, that would have DM'd me if Drew existed? Who would it have been? I'm trying to think. Who would be a big enough loser? I wonder. That's interesting for you to ponder.
But we're saying that you guys are saying all this about it's a new day in WCW. I don't know what y'all were watching. Didn't you see all those organic crowd signs for Hulk Hogan that people definitely made themselves and brought to the show here?
Yeah.
My favorite was Jesse reading them off. We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about it. So anyway, things are changing, and this is, and Oracle deserves full credit for this, because I was just going to say do Stampede in the Ranch. This added something completely different to the lineup. Now, in terms of like blow for blow action, this is not quite going to stack up, right? Like, this is their last televised match. It was taped on June 27th in Columbus, Georgia. Aired on July 24th edition of Main Event. And it isn't like the fairy tale ending in the sense that it is, oh my god, the quintessential Flair Steamboat match to close it out. It isn't that. But it's something very different. And I think that is actually a positive, because after watching the Stampede match and the rematch, what was left for them to do in terms of the classic Flair Steamboat outline, right? This was
did you say
outline.
where this happened, where this was filmed?
This was Columbus, Georgia.
Okay.
A complete outlier, because this is where, Flair's got Sherry by his side, and this match is basically the hits, Flair Steamboat's greatest hits, plus Sherry at every time. Sherry is involved in this. She's like, it's basically a handicap match.
That's working the match.
Yeah, I mean, she's all, and I think it has, it adds a great deal of kind of novelty to the match. This is not a famous match. I logged my review on the cage match. I had 2 reviews before I got to it. 2 reviews for the last televised. It's just not thought of that way. It is on YouTube. It got a little bit of play because it's part of the WCW All Nighter for '94. Or I guess the second one of those, I forget.
On the network, right?
Yeah. So that got a little bit of play.
And it led to a tag match that I've never seen, but is pretty well received.
I've seen the tag match too. That match was great. Flair and Austin versus Steamer and Dustin.
Yeah.
And
Sting.
Or Sting. Yeah. Sorry, Sting.
There you go. Yeah. So we have to know again before we get into it. Like, the crowd gets really into this because, of course, they do. Dude, at the first bell, you could convince someone this is just like a random match, right? Just top guy mid card match. No juice. The crowd doesn't care at all about this match. It's wild, man. Just watching the wrestling world change around them. It's crazy, but they get the people, they hook them. Of course they do, Bobby. What did you make of this one, mate?
I thought it was a fun time. I think it's a really nice way to end this. Just like the, starting point we had was a really nice way to start it, because, everyone kind of knows and expects all the big stuff, but it's important to kind of do these smaller things too. They kind of went out there and just played the hits, and it worked. I'm glad Oracle brought up the Sherry and Ric Flair pairing, because they're a hell of a duo. I know he'll go more into that, but yeah. And another thing, like across the summer of 1994, the big babyface move was just go after Sherry, because Hogan did that a couple times too. Got a huge pop. So, that was where things were in 1994. But yeah, I mean, this is a fun time. You get a little stunning Steve action. Ref just loses control of everything, throws the match out. It was what it had to be.
Yeah. We've said it a lot, Oracle, but you can never say it too much. Sherry Martel was I mean, all-timer. Just an all-time wrestling
just an
talent.
unbelievable worker. I mean, just
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. She's the best person in the match.
Yeah. The bump she takes at the end. Oh,
my God. Listen, the crowd is not with them at first. You know, they come out, they're showing the Hogan stuff. Jesse Ventura's being a passive-aggressive smartass about it's hilarious.
He's so mad at this point.
He's about to leave. He's so mad. He's about to leave.
He's so angry, dude.
and Sherry, like the whole heat of the match, because they do like standard Flair Steamboat stuff, the hits. Then the whole heat of the match is Sherry just beating the shit out of Steamboat and the crowd getting pissed. There's a great moment where like Sherry starts drawing with a lady in the front row and she goes, "You forgot to put your false teeth back in." And okay, so they do such a good job with the Sherry and Rick pairing is awesome. It's like one of my favorite short-lived pairings ever. It's so good. And shows the versatility of, my God, dude, Sherry could manage anybody. I mean, listen, she managed Buddy Rose and Doug Summers.
Yeah.
Shane Douglas, Ric Flair, Randy Savage, Shawn Michaels.
Ted.
Yeah, Ted DiBiase and fucking Harlem Heat, and was believable in every single one of them. Every single one.
Yeah. The Harlem Heat one might be the coolest one.
Yeah. Like, she's fucking awesome.
Booker T had that line one time about her managing Harlem Heat. It was something to the effect of, like, she was more legitimate than we were.
Yeah.
But that stuff is so effective that when Steamboat makes his comeback, Columbus, Georgia is fucking screaming.
Screaming, yes.
Like, they're literally losing their fucking minds when, like, Flair and Sherry are just stooging and showing ass. You know, literally, in Sherry's case.
Yeah.
But, like, she takes an amazing bump to the floor. Like, just an awesome, awesome finish with, Austin coming down, big beatdown. Sherry does an awesome top rope splash on top of Steamboat, and she has like this great like Cheshire grin on her face when they're leaving after the beatdown. It's like such an incredibly fun match that like highlights sort of like what It was like one of the last vestiges of WCW where like you would have like this main eventer sort of upper mid carder match, and like the manager would get involved and there would be a heel beat down, the match would get thrown out, and then the babyface come and make the save. That was like a WCW Southern wrestling staple for forever, and that kind of went away over time, very quickly, by 94, 95. And this was one of the last, sort of, periods of that. But an absolute blast of a match. That last couple of minutes is literally like fucking awesome. Just because the way with the Sherry interference, how the fans became invested in the match through that. Just wonderful work. Tremendous stuff.
Yeah, and if it wasn't clear before, because we've tried our best to stress it, this is not like an outlier. This is just Sherry. This is just what Sherry does at rings. This is standard fare. I'm with you, man. I think this has a great deal of charm. I think it's very, very fun. Alex, what did you make of this?
This is their last televised match together.
Yes, it is.
Might be their last match ever.
I have an update on that momentarily. But first, Alex, go for it, mate. What did you think of it?
They did lock up at the 09 Hall of Fame. Fun stuff. We have talked about Sherry numerous times, be it with Buddy Rose. I know I did, but everyone else on the panel did as well. Her role in the WrestleMania 7 retirement match with Savage and Ultimate Warrior cannot possibly be understated. We haven't done this match on here, but I know it's come up several times. Her role in the Tenryu Savage match is incredible. She would easily fall in the category of, to me, one of the best managers of all time. And this is an example of Steamboat, and Flair are essentially running a house show match here. But the thing that puts it over the top is Sherry's involvement. When she takes that atomic drop and goes flying over the top rope, I mean, just like that's my wrestling right there. So I'd love that. But Flair, you talk about wrestling changing around these guys, but also them just changing. This is comfortably the Ric Flair we would see for the 10 years that followed this right here. Just a lot more walking around and begging off, and not in like the really dynamic way, more of the just like, we already got their money, brother way. We get the same ref bump here, which is of course really funny. Not as funny as Eric Watts coming in to save the day, but it's up there. I think this is, you know me, I always have to look for a deeper meaning in things, and I like to kind of find the theater and everything. And I think this is like a really good and fascinating ending point for this journey we've been on, where this has taken us in terms of, you know, the heights, the dizzying heights, and the, you know, the terrifying heights and the dizzying lows. And this is kind of, honestly, we end this here with their last singles match, I believe. Joe might have an update for us. And it does leave us in this kind of place where you're looking at the crowd and every third seat is empty, and all they're talking about is Hulk Hogan coming in. Yeah. And this was really the end of an era, as far as, you know, not just NWA, WCW, but as far as like Southern wrestling goes. And I know that phrase gets overused, Southern wrestling, but I think this is a really fitting and fascinating place to end. And for what it is, it's a very serviceable and fun 14-minute TV match.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they still, I mean, there's still those bursts of physicality, right? We go, oh, you know, like, they still have a few of them. What was most striking about this, because I did watch this alongside the Saturday Night match, one after another. This feels like years later.
Oh, yeah.
Even from Saturday Night, which is, and partly that, you know, this is a different show and it's main event. But I don't think this was, I'm with you, Alex, and it's kind of, I mean, again, Oracle deserves full credit, but Oracle, I don't think even you could quite have realized how kind of strangely poignant this would be as a farewell note, right? Like it's, the wrestling world has changed around them. And even though they get the people, the response to the first bell tells you a lot about the change. And yeah, interesting. Kind of somber, I suppose, in some ways. They would indeed wrestle beyond this in terms of singles matches. And their last match was actually in Steamboat's final week as an active wrestler. Like in 7 days for his last match as a full-time wrestler.
My God.
It was in Colorado Springs on a house show. It was August 21st. I believe his last match is on the 27th. Don't hold me to that. God. It's in that range. Again, not last match, but you get what I'm saying, right? As a full-time, you know. And that would be, again, even more so the end of an era. You know, Hogan coming in is one thing. He comes in on the heels of Rick Rude being done, and Steamboat is done 1 month later. That's crazy. Like, that roster transforms in an instant. Obviously, there is a huge contrast between Flair and Steamboat since 1994. Steamboat would have the comeback tour in 2009, which ironically was Flair's least active year, like to that point, since being a professional, right? It's bizarrely, you know, since the plane crash and such. 2009, the only Flair matches are the ones on the Hulkamania tour. So basically he didn't wrestle in 2009 for all intents and purposes.
Because WWE, he was never like a full-time contracted performer again, because after he stopped wrestling, right? He would be brought in for one-offs and shit.
Yeah. So Steamboat, you know, I saw earlier him and Jericho. Yeah, I want to say Steamboat worked Japan in that 2009 comeback tour for WWE. I think he did a house show in Japan, which WWE Vault, please.
Being there, I'm sorry, man. Keep talking.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I was gonna say, being there for it was just abysmal, that match Jericho had at 25. But I was live there. But that segment he had with Steamboat, where Steamboat, you know, wound back the clock, that was pretty cool.
Yes, Riley is correct. There was an injury to Steamboat in an angle in 2010. It is wild. These guys were so tired and so mirrored one another, and like all that Flair did in that 15 years where Steamboat didn't wrestle, you know, like Flair has like multiple peaks and valleys in that matches. Time. Yeah, he has genuinely incredible matches and did a lot for his legacy, positively, and also and also like actively embarrassed himself multiple times. It's insane. It really, really is. It's bonkers. So this story does not end there, because of course it doesn't. It's professional wrestling, and so in 2022, both of these fellas wrestled. That sounds fake. It is absolutely true. Yep.
For a second, I thought you were saying each other, and I was like, "Oh, yeah."
Well, to that point, that was the plan. Bobby, you could speak to this, right? You probably remember this being a thing. There was the intention, Comrade's intention was that they were going to wrestle in the same match in 2022. And Steamboat, well, look, I don't mean to speak ill of Ricky Steamboat, okay? He pulled out of the match saying he wants people to leave the memories alone, and then 2 months later did his own match. And Comrade Thompson, who, one of Bob's friends, said, he basically said Ricky Steamboat was a liar. And he didn't say it outright because he likes Ricky Steamboat and he's a legend. But that was the vibe, right, Bob? It sounded like Steamboat wanted more money, basically, is what I'm inferring. Would you agree with that assessment, Bob? Am I being fair?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
You ever heard Conrad talk? I don't know what y'all are referencing, but I could just hear him. Listen, I don't want to speak bad of Ricky Steamboat. You know, that's how he would start something like that.
That's exactly what he says. Okay. I found it. So July 8th, 2009, Nippon Budokan, bro. 16-minute match, Chris Jericho, Ricky Steamboat.
At the Budokan?
Yes, in front of 6,000 people, which is
at WWE Vault. At WWE Vault.
Yes, this is famous, not really famous, but this is infamous, perhaps, because Punk main events this show with Jeff Hardy. They go 25 minutes, and this is the show that allowed Punk to do the thing about like sold out house in Japan, brother, and everyone was like, 6,000 at Nippon Budokan is not exactly. Do you remember that deal? That's the match. So I'm looking at the rest of this card. Evan Bourne, Ray Jr., 16 minutes.
Oh, I bet that's fucking good.
God, Tommy Dreamer worked this show. What a disgrace.
Come on,
Great Khali over Dolph Ziggler.
Did he work Christian?
He and Christian tagged against Swagger and Henry. Might have been good.
Oh, that rules.
Might be okay.
Is that the show? I'm trying to. What year was that?
09.
2009. Yeah, summer 09.
There was some, around that time. There was some show. Bull Nakano came like backstage and like.
Oh my God!
Half the people just didn't recognize her because she had her ring gear was very her look was different. But Punk has a really cool picture with her from that time period.
Beast, but it is crazy, right, boys? I mean, they could have locked up in 2022. They did not. I think it worked out better for Ricky Steamboat. His match. Has anyone else seen his retirement match? Or am I alone?
Good.
Dude, it's like actually good, legitimately good.
He teamed with the FTR, right?
The FTR against the All-Star team of Brock Anderson, Jay Lethal, and Nick Aldis was the team opposite them.
I've seen like the clip of Steamer's hot tag, and it's like, yep, he's still got it.
It is legitimately good because he's fully aware of his limitations. He works a logical match as an old man rather than doing what Ric Flair did and like whatever the fuck Ric Flair was trying to do with that match. It's graceful. It's dignified. It's classy. It's beautiful, man. I mean, it got no play, to be honest, and it was very poorly promoted, but like, I love that match. I've watched it multiple times. It's sweet, man. It's cool. So yeah, that's wild to me. 2022 is where these stories come to a close as in-ring talent. My goodness.
Is that Richie and Ricky versus Dude Busters tag on tape?
I have no idea, but I saw it earlier and popped huge. Got some time
minutes.
too. Yeah, 20 minutes. 20 minutes telling stories, brother.
Couple quick Ricky Steamboat anecdotes. I did see someone ask the context of his run in Ring of Honor, which was
good call.
That was when Gabe was just kind of bringing in. It was weird because it looked like for a minute Steamboat was going to wrestle a match against Punk, but then him and Punk kind of teamed up. They did this thing where Ricky had his pure wrestling tag team against Mick Foley's hardcore tag team in like this feud, and they had a really good promo battle where in the middle of it Ricky called out Mick for He's like, wait, I heard this all 20 years ago when Terry Funk said it. It's pretty funny. The best story, in my opinion, to come from that is, I guess Roderick Strong did something that annoyed Ricky Steamboat, because they did this segment where like Steamboat runs off Generation Next and he's doing like arm drags and chops, and they all got to the back and Roderick was like, God, was he taking it harder than any of y'all? And they were like, no. And so it was like this joke that Roderick Strong could never figure out what he did to piss off Ricky Steamboat and why Ricky stiffed him in this like pull apart they had. My favorite, it was after the WrestleMania 25 thing, but it was still FCW when they brought Ricky in to be like a guest trainer for a week, and everyone just said he just kind of was like, yeah, do whatever. But one of the I don't know if you can find it anywhere anymore, but one of the all-time great shoot interviews is with Bobby Dutch, now known as just Dutch in all caps, of the Righteous and I believe Ring of Honor. He talked about they were doing some, like on the FCW loops, they would, after like the local minor league baseball game, set up a ring on the diamond and just have like 2 or 3 matches, sell them on FCW. And he said he was just walking around before the show, and he said he ran into an extremely inebriated Ricky Steamboat who just like yelled in his face, Bobby D! And the part of the interview I always remember is he said part of the deal was Steamboat had to have transportation to and from, and Johnny Mercury drove him back to his hotel or whatever. And he said, Dutch said that Johnny Mercury texted him, dude, Ricky Steamboat just murder fucked a family-sized bag of Doritos in my car. So that's my lasting image of Ricky Steamboat, is just, you know, having a few soda pops and just going to town on some Doritos in a dude's rental car.
I am looking at this Colorado Springs card with the last Flair Steamboat match. Have you looked at this card, Joe?
No, I have not.
So the card is Terry Taylor versus Jean-Paul Levesque as the opener.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, man.
God, that's like a...
As in Stevie Ray Kane versus Brad Armstrong. Dustin Rhodes versus Arn Anderson.
Okay.
Bunkhouse Buck and Terry Funk versus Chavo and Mondo Guerrero.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that sounds fucking awesome.
Well, hold on.
Regal versus Larry Zbyszko for the TV title, which probably fucking ruled. And
Beautiful.
Ricky and Flair was a main event.
Well, that sounds delicious.
If we had to guess, what we say the attendance on that was 800.
Yeah,
1,200.
Okay. Yeah. Steamboat. Maybe I could be wrong. Chat, please tell me if I am, because I want to speak out of turn. I don't like to, credit people for being good, credit wrestlers being good people. For someone who agented for as long as he did, it seems like he mostly had a very positive reputation among the boys. It seems like he was like in the Arn Anderson camp of people liked. The only thing I remember about him in a sort of loving way was MVP saying that when you're a heel, he's the worst guy to have your match, because all of his ideas are great babyface spots. Like, oh, then you could do this, then you could do this, and the heels just kind of stand there with their arms folded. Like, I'd like to do something here too, Ricky, which I always thought was great. He said Arn was the opposite. If you're the babyface, you don't want Arn, dude. Arn's got all these great heel cut-offs and tricks,
Joe,
But,
have you ever heard or read the story of he didn't agent it, but he kind of sat in when Punk and Samoa Joe were putting together their third match and offered the Joe putting his feet on the ropes thing?
Mm-hmm.
Where, when you think about it, how fucking brilliant that is, that like a guy who's just been a babyface the entire run that he's had there had to try to cheat to win.
Yes, and the story goes that they both admit they didn't really like the idea, right? And then they did it, and they was like, oh my God, the place loved it, and it was a great moment, yeah. It's definitely... I don't want to dwell on it because I don't really see the point, to be honest with you, but these two fellas and their stories since 1994 are very interesting and are quite contrasting in a lot of ways, to be honest. And I'll leave it at that. And again, that's not to say Flair doesn't have great stuff. He has incredible stuff off 1994. And just as a pro wrestler, I think Ric Flair is definitely a candidate for the greatest of all time. I do, We've praised these matches for a reason. But man, is that not... There's a depth to that 2022 contrast of their comeback matches that I think you could probably dig into if you wanted to, right? Like, there's a certain amount of awareness in one that was completely absent from the other, which felt anything but dignified. That felt more like a sort of a car crash, or that's almost a publicity stunt. It was sad.
I appreciate how polite you're being about it, Joe.
Yeah, because it's, I think people don't watch Grin Grappler to be reminded that wrestlers are assholes. And so, like, I'm not trying to, but let's be just real. Being a Ric Flair fan, being a fan of Ric Flair's work, has been increasingly challenging with all of his many, and I'm talking about extreme stories, and I'm talking about shit like him just embarrassing himself in restaurants. Like, he's just,
Yeah.
it's a mess, dude, right? It's kind of tough to be a fan at any level, I think, but that's the least of anyone's worries. Me struggling to be a fan shouldn't be anyone's concern, ever, so don't worry about it. But I do think it's notable. Nonetheless, I wanted to ask you boys, before we look ahead to next month's Grappler, what other rivalries could we do this program for?
Well, real quick before we go to
Yes,
that,
sir.
I just want to call out because I have seen it before and I find it to be a bit of a hootski. In 1993 on Saturday night, there was a match where Rick and Ricky teamed up. It was Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, and Sting versus Rick Rude and the Nasty Boys.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Whoa. I haven't seen that. Wow.
yeah, it's very weird placement too. It's October 93, so it's still like 6 months removed from what we would get to here in 94.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Well, that's wild. We will,
anyway.
for anyone wonder, we'll circle back to put a bow on the flip. But before we did, I wanted to ask you guys, what do you reckon? What other rivalries would even feasibly fit our 3-act structure? What do you reckon, boys?
I would say we could do. I don't think we could do 6 matches because the matches are too long and the depth of the match is too long. I think we could do a Misawa Kabashi or Misawa Kawada.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We could do
I
3 or
think
4
that
matches
those are natural.
for those. I think we could. I think we could definitely do that.
I think
think-
those are the natural ones, yes.
We could legitimately do a Sean Brett one because we could do Heart Foundation Rockers matches and stuff like that
True.
along the way.
Yep. Yep.
I don't love their stuff, so that would actually be more interesting in some ways.
Austin Rock could do that.
Yeah, we could do that
Yeah.
too.
They're
Yeah.
very tight together, don't they? You know?
Yeah.
Like, how many years would you have there? Like, I guess you could do it, yeah.
Yeah,
90s.
Eddie and Ray's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because with Eddie and Ray, even within WWE, there's 2 chapters to me, right? Like, the 2005 stuff is very different to what they do when they're part of the SmackDown 6. That could be fun.
I have seen it here, and I think even this came up on some of the responses to the show we were doing. People have been talking about Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. It's true, but we've already covered 2 or 3 of their matches already.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I think we covered their best WWE match for sure, unless they do something crazy next week. I think Battleground's their best WWE
I
match
hope
easily.
they do something. I hope they bleed, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we shall see.
they bleed.
I'm trying to think. Punk and Joe is weird because they have like a 20-year gap between 2 acts. There's not really a 3rd act. You know what I'm saying? It's really strange, right?
Yeah, and we'd have to watch the that British Super Show where the ring was like fucking 12 by 12. Yeah. Get some good ring discourse in there, though.
Good call. That's a good point. That's always appealing.
You know what
Good
we could
idea.
do? Even though it would just be like, it would be over the course of like 5 years. It would be very TNA, maybe with some indies. I've got a unique one: Joe, Daniels, and AJ triple threat rivalry.
Oh,
You could do the Joe. I think we already did the Joe AJ one from Turning Point, though, didn't we?
We might have that Joe. Man, that Joe episode's 3 years ago now. I don't know.
Yeah. Run it back.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just saying like that. That's just kind of a unique one that I could.
That's
you know,
fun.
could
Yeah,
do.
yeah, definitely. You could do Joe and AJ straight up. To be honest with you.
Yep.
Yeah, you could definitely do those 2. Yeah, there's some interesting ones, and it was definitely fun. What I would say is, folks, and this is not me advertising anything or committing to anything. If we do more rivalry episodes, we may in future position them as like a bonus thing. You know what I'm saying? Like something we do in addition to. Because it does, doing this tonight, it has felt like a different show almost at times, which I think is cool because we've done 3 years of these now, right? Like I think it's fun.
I think this is a great idea. I think this is, creativity matters, and of course, I like that we do a special one every December, and all
Right.
that stuff, so
Yeah, it's got some legs for sure. Like you said, maybe every few months and maybe put a paywall on it or something. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe we'll find something for it. But it's been a fun kind of twist. And before we look ahead to next month, let's put a bow on that very twist. Flair and Steamboat, the legacy of, or I guess more specifically, the memory of this rivalry, Bobby. Any final words in that regard, mate?
No, I think it definitely lives up to the hype. Coming in, like I said, I wasn't super familiar with it. I had a good time with all 6 of these matches. I didn't love all of them equally, but I had a good time with all of them. And yeah, I mean, and it's kind of crazy too. Like Alex said in the beginning, it's only over 12 years, and that feels like a long time. But like you think of WWE 12 years ago, it's mostly the same people near the top, and it's just it's just weird how slow things are to change now.
Yeah, it's definitely accelerated in the last couple of years, but like Monopoly wrestling, shit would just never changed. It was like it was the same. People would just stick around forever. It's changing more now, but yeah, definitely I agree.
12 years ago today, guess what it was?
Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar.
No.
Oh, okay. What was that?
It's a
12
good
years ago today.
Yes.
CM Punk hit a pile driver on John Cena. And what, in my opinion, it might be the greatest Raw match ever.
Amazing match.
That was
February 25th, 2013.
It was Dallas, right?
Dallas, yeah. That match
what would Fritz have thought of that match, Alex? What would Fritz have thought of Punk and Cena?
He would have loved it until fucking Cena did that Hurricane Rana. God damn it, why are you leaving your feet, boy? I tell Chris all the goddamn time. So that match was in Dallas and is a bonus feature on the 50th commemorative whatever fucking Blu-ray. That's almost like, I think that was the reason I bought it, was because it had that match like in 1080. But that match also has Hogan and Andre from 3 from the arena cam, just like behind the hard cam the entire match, so you could see the crowd reacting to it. I'm sorry, Oracle, you opened the door for me to just gush about media.
That set has one of the most insane documentaries ever made, in which like the story of WWE is told through the most psychotic lens imaginable in many ways.
So I've watched that Blu-ray numerous times because the match lineup is so good. I watched that documentary once and I was like, I need to probably just erase this from my memory.
There's an Owen chapter on that deal that is like unhinged.
That paints Vince McMahon as the victim of the situation.
Dude, it is bonkers. And all the boys are on there going, oh man, it was real tough for old Vince Jr. up there. He had to figure it out.
Taker's in there, like, in non-character with his fucking bandana and beanie on and being like, it hurt Vince. He had a really hard time with that. It's like, oh, did he? One guy died.
Dude, Grinners are listening to this right now thinking you're doing a bit. That is exactly what he says, and that's exactly how he looks and how he delivers it. Like, that's exactly it. But nonetheless, another story for another day. So, Flair Steamboat, the memory of, the legacy of, the lasting impact of, the Oracle of Wrestling, what do you reckon? Anything to add?
I mean, it's still one of the most transcendent rivalries, one of the most legendary rivalries in wrestling history. Probably the rivalry that is in the sort of wrestling lexicon that's like referenced, like you mentioned at the beginning of the show. Well, it's not Flair Steamboat. it's the baseline. It's the it's the
standard, right? The standard.
It's the standard. When you define a great rivalry in wrestling from a athletic in-ring standpoint, it's Flair Steamboat. That's the synonym for it, it's still holds up. 12 years is a very long time, and as Alex pointed out, it shows you how different 12 years are from 1982 to 1994, and me just bringing up the Punk Cena match, how very undifferent winter 2013 to winter 2025 is in terms of 12 years. It just shows you how time changes and whatnot, but absolutely still to this day one of the all-time great rivalries in the history of wrestling.
Certainly agreed. Alex, anything to add when it comes to the lasting impact of this rivalry?
Not really. Just when I was saying about in 05, that forum post I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this.
Mm-hmm.
This Kobashi and Misawa, Dynamite Kid, Tiger Mask. I think those three rivalries in terms of just consistent match quality stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you were talking about those three rivalries and their match quality and the time since then, in the past 20 years, I can think of maybe one that people would want to add. I'm not going to bring it up here because we're not going to start fucking arguing this late in the evening, but it's just what they said stands the test of time. You watch these and you're like, yeah, they were kind of made for each other. And I hope we stressed along the way too that it's not like Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair only had good matches with each other. They're
right.
They're two of the best at what they ever did, but together they were just fucking magic, man.
Yeah.
They were. Jim Ross would say that's baby back ribs and barbecue sauce. You want a piece of that, and that's kind of what they were together. And yeah, I think we did it justice. And this, to be completely honest, the journey was a bit more interesting than I expected it to be, from starting in Japan and ending on that kind of whimper that was on Main Event. So, but yes, if you've never seen their matches, even if long matches aren't for you, seek them out. It's pretty much like historical text at this point.
It is. Just between you and I, you can be honest. You were talking about Bliss Cross and Kabuki's, right? The rivalry thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I could tell by the way you delivered it, but I didn't want to. All right, cool. Yeah, it's the gold standard for me in terms of sports style wrestling. I think there is something very powerful and romantic about the way their matches feel, I have to say, and it's the reason I think I often find myself going back to it. Just that, again, we almost, honestly, on Chi-Town Rumble, we actually were unable to even really describe it because it's just, you got to just see it. And if you saw it, you probably got why we were struggling. That's what I'll always think of, that visual, Those two guys, Chi-Town Rumble, the sound of the chops, Jim Ross's excitement.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. It's some of my favorite pro wrestling ever. And I think that match in particular has a case of, like, the US wrestling match. I think it has a genuine case for that. And I don't say it lightly because I'm aware there's a million and one contenders. All-time great stuff from two all-time great pro wrestlers. Incredible. Okay, now before we look ahead to March's Grin Grappler, Bobby, any tips for someone who's enjoyed this show and how they can show that, mate?
Yeah, if you're having a good time, you're going to want to go ahead and smash that like button, especially if you didn't before. If it's your first time, definitely do it now. If it's your third time, do it now. If it's your second time, do not do it. Odd numbers.
Odd numbers, folks. You know the deal. There you go. Oracle with visual aids here for the people.
There you go.
Okay, let's look ahead to March. We got some quirky ones. We got some wacky ones. We got some enticing ones. One of them just came up a moment ago, in fact. The recently retired Christopher Daniels is a nominee for March Grin Grappler. A cohort of his across a couple of different places. We have Homicide, who apparently is retiring this year, which he said for the last 11 years, but maybe this is finally the one he's going to call a day. We have Umaga, who had that detour in Japan, which could make for a quirky step along the way. We have WWE LFG legend Booker T, who's, I think, and I'll just say this now, I think he would be a fascinating episode because I think his work is great and I think he has like hardly any great matches that don't include, so like that episode I think would be really interesting, legitimately. We have Kenta, who could end up getting confirmed shoot booked on the show, which could be a mistake, I feel. And we have a new one that's just, I think's, a recent name in wrestling, and I interests me because I think his catalog's deeper than you may realize. Big E is the last name I wanted to put your way. So Daniels, Homicide, Umaga, Booker, Kenta, and Big E. I have a few preferences, but I'm intrigued by all of these. That's why I throw them out there. Bobby, always go you first, out of respect, because otherwise you don't show up. Where you going on this one, mate?
Yeah, immediately I thought Umaga. I don't know about his Japan stuff that much. So yeah, I mean, that would actually be really interesting, I think. Or Booker. Yeah, because I do like Booker T quite a bit.
Booker does, like, In terms of star ratings, the Booker episode could be like Lexi level. You know that, right? Legitimately. Because honestly, dude, Harlem Heat. I mean, as cool as Harlem Heat was, what are the matches we're gonna do? Like the Outsiders match.
Yeah.
He may fucking lose that door. Even I'm running this through my head. All right, well, I'm intrigued. Contrarian Alex, what do you reckon?
There's like a triple threat tag that I think is the Outsiders, the Nasties, and Harlem Heat. No, that might be someone different. But anyway, out of that lineup, it was Kenta and Booker T. That was who I went to. Basically, because I rewatched the Ricky Marvin 2-minute match with Kenta earlier today, and that got me just bricked up. So I was like, all right, let's fucking go.
That match is fucking awesome.
But yeah, I would say, Kenta or Booker T is where my mind went.
Right, I'm going to examine cage match for a minute. Oracle, what do you think?
So I'm battling between three of them: Kenta, Booker, or Umaga. Kenta would be fun because I would try to campaign for a Mustafa Ali match.
No, we are not doing that fucking match. We are not doing it.
Great though. It's a great.
We could do Hideo Itami versus Roderick Strong though.
Well, okay, so now that's a healthy middle ground.
Okay, Hideo Itami versus Oni Lorcan's fucking awesome.
He does. Yeah,
that match fucking rules.
He has some good stuff there, man. You could easily do it. Yeah.
Let me think. Damn it, Joe. That Ali match is fucking great. I don't care. I know you don't like it as much as me, but
he keeps respect me over and over, and then he goes, I respect you. Oh, Jesus, this is terrible. Terrible. Get it out of here. All right. I'm looking at Booker's catalog right now, brothers. This is.
He's got a good Bret Hart match
from Great American Bash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you saying Bret Hart also?
The Bret match from February 99 is great. Yes.
Yeah. What else are we gonna do?
The Lance Storm match.
Oh fuck! All of his good matches are with the other guy, you know.
Booker.
We could do.
I'm curious. I do like Booker and Dwayne from SummerSlam 01 a good bit. I think it's super fun.
Or we could do the inaugural brawl, the 10-man from Invasion, because Booker's a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, Booker's catalog is crazy, guys. Like for someone whose work was so good.
I've never seen this match, but I really want to see it. The Armageddon 04 four-way.
That's the only. I've never seen it either, but I know that's the only match where Taker and Eddie had like any interaction.
And they have like a face-off, don't they, in the match?
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
So the acts for Booker would be Harlem Heat, WCW top guy, WWF, right? Mm-hmm. We can't do TNA, can we? That's just experimental.
Yeah. The AJ matches are pretty good. Not great, but they're pretty good.
AJ was like the one guy he would like tie
Imagine that.
A very late era Booker. I'm just saying, throwing this out there. If we were to pick him, one of the AJ matches and that Cody IC title match, which is not even that good, it's just okay. But if we really wanted to do it as like a,
we could do that and get rid of the Harlem Heat act, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like we could get away with
I want to do one of those fucking Nasty Boys Harlem Heat concession stand brawls though, man.
Like Uncensored 95.
Yeah,
we could do that. Yeah,
we could probably do Uncensored 95. We could probably get away with that because Sherry's in that match and she's incredible in it.
Yeah,
that's just another excuse to get Sherry in. So we
looking at these stuff.
Yeah,
the 5 highest rated Dave matches of Booker's career. Oh, Survivor Series Elimination, Money in the Bank, Rumble, Survivor Series Elimination, Elimination Chamber. What a fucking beast, bro. Bro's got a Kane catalogue, man. This is incredible. But his work is so good, you know?
He does have, if I remember, this is all a card subject to change. He has like a triple threat. I think it's not his way out, but in TNA he wrestles AJ Styles and Christian Cage at Bound for Glory in a triple threat.
That match is good.
Yeah.
The problem with that match is though, like, to say he's the third guy in that would be generous. You know, he might be fourth if the referee was warmed up. His effort in TNA is diabolical, man. I mean, it's what it is, isn't it?
We when did we talk? It was on a grin along we did of that Bound for Glory 2009 or whatever, where he just was like, "All right, I'm done. Take me out of the ring."
Okay, so We could do WCW. It feels wrong for WWE to be 2 acts of Booker's career. Or, sorry, for WCW not to be 2 acts of his career, though, you know?
Yeah.
It does.
I
think
we
yeah,
can
Do a
get away
CCW
with
run.
if we're just thinking out loud. Uncensored
We are, yes.
95, Great American Bash 98 with Finley, Brett 99.
And then the Outsiders match. That should be his WCW matches.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the outside, yep. And then
He's got it.
4.
Uh-oh.
We lose the contrarian.
Did we?
There we
He's
go.
back. He's here.
Yeah. Are you here? Hello,
Oh,
Alex.
yeah. Sorry. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said something and then you broke up and then you were back with us. Go for it.
Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
said he's got to. You said he's got to. He was in the midst of a pitch, I felt. You're about to unveil a
He's gotta have, like-
suggestion.
There's got to be a great match with Kurt Angle somewhere along the way.
Like Oracle.
Yeah, I don't.
This episode is going to be awesome, dude.
No,
This episode is
like-
for 6 times. We're just going to go.
The Kurt matches in the spring of 05 are like solid, but the whole
I'm thinking
thing
like
is
Invasion
Kurt's
era.
a racist pervert, so it's not really. It's not like.
Yeah.
Dude,
They
we are
would.
going to 6 times. We're going to go. Man, I love when Booker did this. I love when he did that. How great did this
Booker
look?
Ray,
Match sucks.
The Great American Bash is not very good. The rematch is better on TV.
No, there has to be like I'll do the deep dive on it. He has to have wrestled Kurt during the Invasion era at some point somewhere and had a good match.
Oh, the WCW World Title matches. A couple of those are okay, I think.
Okay.
All right. I think this is the play, boys. I'll be honest. I'm biased because it's the one that popped me, but I think this is the play.
I'm fine with
I
it.
think Booker T.
I'm legit excited to watch that Uncensored 95 match because that match is super
The
fun.
match is a blast.
Okay, he did wrestle Kurt a lot in the Invasion angle.
I know. I just
so-
decided to just totally make that the match, but I know Alex wanted one of the nastiest matches. I think
Dude, we're not exactly spoiled for choice. It's the fucking Harlem Heat run, man. It's the. And I like Harlem Heat. I'm just being real.
Yeah.
I mean, recently, Vic Joseph said they're one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Well, you know. All right. And then we've got this come together then.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to find. It's going to be an interesting journey. We're going to figure it out, guys, okay? It's coming together here slowly. Bear with us. Okay. Booker T, are we all on board?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, there you go. Up next, WWE LFG Booker T, folks. There you go. All right. Well, there you go. It brings this month's grappler to a close. Time to do some plugs and get on out of here. I've got a feeling the post show tonight is going to be like 50% Booker T conversation, which pops me. Bobby, you have anything to plug, mate?
I do. Chamber Carousel this Friday, the
Holy
flagship
shit.
Late Night Grin. I'm back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oracle, Joe, Manny, Chris Bordine, and myself, the Fed 5. I don't know if we've ever had a Fed 5, but here we are.
We do now, bro.
Hell yeah.
Manny the Hooper. Chamber Carousel is going to be great. Very, very excited for that. It's Friday. Oracle, you'll be there too. Anything else you'd like to plug?
Tomorrow evening, I recruit and have allowed some young boys to be in my class as we explore classic lucha libre. Jesus Christ!
Amateur hour, bro.
I mean, F minus.
Yep, agreed.
As we explore old school lucha, 4 matches, and the topic this month, lucha brawls and the Apuestas match. Although I don't think Santo and Park is an Apuestas match, but it's basically a bunch of bloody brawls. We've got Biano 3 versus Rambo. We've got El Dandy versus Parada Morgan. We have got El Hijo de Santo versus El Dandy versus Nego Casas. And we have El Hijo de Santo versus La Parca. So those are the 4 matches we'll be covering and discussing tomorrow evening at 10:05 or 10:15 or so, somewhere once Dynamite ends. We will go live for School of Wrestling. And we will cover Lucha Libre through the spring. And then we'll have a new topic and new class in the summer for School
Yes,
of
sir.
Wrestling. So we have old school lucha to cover through the spring here in 2025.
And you can join us for that, folks. There's a link below for LNG Gold, and it used to be better tier for that. You also get Grindication. You'll get Retro Pay-Per-View Grin Along, Retro TV Grin Along, and all of the JHP offerings. Much going on there. Speaking of it used to be better tier, you'll also get Full Sail Behind this Thursday. Myself and young Chris, not Chris Bourdine, young Lion, graduated Chris, lawyer Chris, who we were talking about Full Sail NXT in 2015, February 2015, that is. So that should be fun. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Joe. To answer Jumanji's answer real quick, if you were to pick one of the four, I would pick the three-way. The context requires a little bit of research, probably. But in terms of quality, it is legitimately one of the best matches in the history of wrestling.
There you go.
So yeah, that would be my advice would be to watch the triple threat there.
Yes, sir. Contrarian Alex, I asked this just a few days ago, but I'm going to ask you again because it's the right thing to do on this wonderful program we have here. Tell the people about what's going on over at the Contrarians, brother.
Well, most pressingly, Joe, you're part of this journey as well. We have our weekly episodic installments of Tough 20, which this week will be dropping episode 7. So we're going to be just halfway into the series in which we recount episode by episode the first season of The Ultimate Fighter and all of its glory and shame. We had quite a time recording that, and it's been a lot of fun to watch it play out. Like we were talking about on Friday, Joe, we recorded these so long ago, but these most recent episodes, you can really tell we're like figuring out what we were doing and getting into our stride. So that's a hell of a lot of fun. I was sick there for a while, so it knocked us behind. But here in a few days, for you slasher horror / Halloween fans, Halloween Resurrection is going to be hitting the feed for the Contrarians. God, that movie's terrible. But as usually is the case with movies like that, the story behind the scenes is pretty fascinating and fun to talk about. So we are thecontrarians.com, at Contrarian Prime across social media. Subscribe, like, comment, etc., etc. And for those of y'all who've been tuning in to the Tough 20 series thus far, it's greatly appreciated. Yeah,
it pops me every time we get any feedback on it, because we taped it so long ago. I pop, like, people in the chat will reference stuff, and I'll be like, wait, oh yeah, Top 20. It was so fun. So yeah, go check that out. And we are still, as I mentioned on Friday, we're going to do a little shoot fight Grin Along here shortly. It's just been a chaotic time, but that'll be coming up. So stacked week, folks. We mentioned all the other stuff. Friday, I'm reviewing some matches. We also have Chamber Carousel, as we said, and then Saturday night, Grinner Circle members will be joining us for an Elimination Chamber Grin Along, Skydome, right, this Saturday. 30,000 people in attendance.
Is it the Skydome or Rogers Center?
No, it's Skydome.
Oh, wow.
I think the Skydome is now called...
It's called Rogers Center now, but yeah.
It's
30,000. It's not the arena. It's not.
No, it's not where the Raptors play. Yeah, it's the actual...
It's obviously, that's a huge house, but I say 30,000 not to dismiss it, but because when you think Skydome, obviously you're thinking like fucking WrestleMania, right? And 80,000 people or whatever, but it's still a big house. So that should be fun on Saturday. We hope you've enjoyed this, folks. If you haven't, hit the like button when Bob suggested it, or if you have, you know the deal, the odd numbers thing. This is what to do here. We appreciate you for joining us here on a glorious Tuesday night, and we'll be back next month, us four anyway, for a Booker T episode that may break the format. We shall see. Keep grinning. All how. Enjoy this outro, folks. Goodbye.